Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we actually have a guest. Yes, we have a guest, and we've been gone for 2 weeks. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful because I really missed you guys. I'm so sorry I didn't do a show last Sunday. I work retail, if you didn't know, and it was Black Friday weekend, and I messed up my shoulder. I basically spent Sunday night watching movies and icing my shoulder with my family. So I apologize, I didn't do a show. And I don't have any guests until February 7th. So it's going to be a lot of open lines and shorter shows, unless I get some guests booked in between there. We'll see. But I have one tonight, and I've been so excited for this one. Christopher Jones. We're going to talk about his book and his experiences and knowledge in, we'll just say the name of his book here, The Palmistry of Fingerprints, the secret patterns hidden in your fingers and palms. I've always wanted to have a guest on to understand. I mean, I've had books, I've read some stuff on palm reading, but I am just a noob to that. And something so interesting to me that, and it's not about predicting the future. I know that much about our guest and about palmistry. It's much more about who you are, telling you about who you are and your journey you're on. It's really interesting, all this stuff in your hands, that knowledge. I can't wait to talk to our Christopher Jones tonight, our guest, about this. And of course, lots of weird in the World Wide Web of Weird. I had so much because we've been gone for 2 weeks, but I got 7 articles as usual, narrowed it down, but I think they're good ones. And we'll open up the phone lines later in the show for you guys to call in. Now, he's not going to be able to read your hands over the phone. We're not doing any readings or anything like that. But I am selfishly giving him pictures of my hands. But he said he'll hold no punches tonight on me. So enjoy as he gets to work into my inner energy with my prints of my hands. And God knows what the hell they're telling him, but I don't know. But I missed you guys. We're back tonight, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Christopher Jones, will join us after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our first commercial break. Joining me, as always, though, is my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How are you tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
Happy to be really back, excited. Everybody. Yeah, glad to see you. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, Jamie. I hope all you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I wish I could have, spent it with you. I'm sorry, I was just beat. Just worn out last Sunday, and I didn't have a guest, and I didn't have time to really get a World Wide Web of Weird together. That was the worst part about it. I was just had no time to really give you guys any kind of good show last Sunday. Next Sunday, I don't have a guest, but I'm still going to do a show. We'll do World Wide Web of Weird, open lines. You guys make the show. You call in. I don't know if Rob's going to make it. He was trying, I think, but we'll see. We'll see. Otherwise, I got to do the World Wide Web of Weird, and you know how horrible I'm at it, but I'll do my best. But we got a lot of weird to get into, so let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I'd start out with this one. I'm sure everybody's heard and seen this, but I have to talk about it. You know, everybody partakes a little more in the holidays, drinks a little heavier, and sometimes things just get a little wild, and you find yourself passed out in a bathroom after robbing a liquor store. That's a story for one individual named Rocky Raccoon. I don't know if that's his name, but he's a raccoon out of Virginia. Drunk raccoon passes out in Virginia liquor store bathroom after ransacking business. For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio network, we are a webcast. We stream out live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you want to watch, because I will have videos and pictures like, I don't have the video of this. There is a video of this, a surveillance video. I just have the picture from the article. But there are some videos. There's a UFO video tonight. If you want to come watch, come watch. Otherwise, I'll narrate horribly, as usual. All right, there it is. Drunk raccoon passes out in Virginia liquor store bathroom after ransacking business. Tim Binnell from Coast to Coast here. Workers at a Virginia liquor store had quite the cleanup on their hands over the weekend after a raccoon broke into the business, sampled several of their spirits, and ultimately passed out on the bathroom floor. The weird burglary, detailed in an amusing post on the Hanover County Animal Protection and Shelter Facebook page, occurred sometime in the overnight hours after ABC stores in Ashland had closed on Friday. Tasked with responding to the unusual call on Saturday morning, Department Officer Martin arrived on the scene to find the smashed liquor bottles strewn throughout the business and surprising culprit behind the chaos, a very intoxicated raccoon. The post on the Trash Panda's drunken misadventures indicated that the officer safely secured our masked bandit and transported him back to a shelter to sober up before questioning. Later examined for potential injuries, the mischievous critter was said to be perfectly fine other than maybe a hangover and poor life choices. The department subsequently released the raccoon back into the wild, hopefully having learned that the breaking and entering is not the answer. Funny. But does he have a serious drinking problem? They should have put him to AA. I mean, seriously, though, like, this raccoon, I'm sure there's food and stuff in there. I'm thinking, I know it's a liquor store, but I'm sure, you would scrounge out for the food. No, he went for the liquor. And if you watch the video, he's going for the liquor. He's busting there's Rob. He's busting the bottles open, drinking it. And literally just when he's finally had enough, which is a lot, he drinks a lot. This little guy right there, you see the picture there, he goes and crawls into the bathroom and passes out near the toilet. Just like a girl at a frat house party getting too drunk goes I need to get near to the toilet. That's what he did. So I love this story. I know everybody's seen it, but I had to talk about it. That one. All right, Rob. Hello. You saw the drunk raccoon story? Wasn't Florida, though.
Yeah.
I don't.
My Dropbox is still giving me.
Okay. I'll get it. Your mic's a little hot, too. You're getting a lot of fuzz coming from you.
Says it's full.
All right, I'll get it. Like I said, your mic is really hot. It's got real loud and a lot of fuzz coming through. You're really quiet, but the fuzz is still there. This is like we had with the sound check earlier with the guest. All right, we'll mute until you figure it out. I'm going to go on to the next one. All right. This one's for my wife. Really? Yeah. Her approval on this. But she swears to God that she's been saying for months that the pigeons could be AI robots. You would never know. Because she swears to God there's this pigeon that creeps her out, that watches her. she came, so then this article came up. This article came up when I was going through articles. She's like, see?
They're making them in little tiny dragonflies and pigeons. A lot of taxidermy birds they're using.
Well, Russia creates bio-drone spy pigeons with computer chips. New type of drone, one made of flesh and blood as opposed to metal and plastic, has been subject to a disturbing new experiment at the state-linked Moscow neurotechnology firm NIRI. By implanting neural chips inside the brains of pigeons, boffins have succeeded in creating a flock of birds that can be remotely controlled, thus enabling their flight routes to be directed from afar. Each bird is equipped with a tiny solar-powered backpack that tracks them and receives the signals. I should have asked her, did you see a little solar-powered backpack? According to the firm, any bird can potentially be fitted with the same technology. Because the animals can cover hundreds of miles a day, and the goal of the work is to enable the birds to act as remote-controlled biological reconnaissance drones. For transporting heavier payloads, we plan to use ravens for coastal monitoring, seagulls for large marine territories, albatross, he said. Company founder Alex Panov. The implications of this are concerning, as large birds could even be equipped with small explosive payloads, potentially used to fly into and blow up enemy targets on the battlefield. Seriously, why do we gotta be a-hole humans? Why do we gotta be a-hole humans? And they wanted to do this with dolphins too, you know. The military has experimented with dolphins and want to put bombs on dolphins and stuff like that. Leave the animals alone.
To go to the other side and do things.
I mean, they are totally making like robotic birds. That could be. That's my wife thinks that's a robotic bird. You know, that's what she would do. But you know, I'm just saying.
Taxidermy birds and making them into drones, so they look as
into
real.
Drones. That's what my wife's saying. This is like they're using real birds.
For real.
The bird's already dead. Whatever. But don't leave the. It's like, you know, our CIA when they were putting like they were sewing like electrical devices under the skin of cats, so they could listen in on conversations until they heard the cat get squashed. Yeah, we covered that years ago. It came out Freedom of Information Act. All right, moving on. Just leave the animals alone. I mean, seriously, keep them out of our human bull crap. Really pisses me off, like the dolphin thing. Really, you know, they're still doing it. You know, they did have dolphins on Star Trek: The Next Generation. You didn't know it. It's for fans out there. Never, sorry. Oh wait, this is a video. Wrong one. This is a video. Video file. Yep. All right. Because I think this next one's a UFO. Well, let me pause it. Anybody seen the movie Nope? That's what this one reminds me of. Canadian motorists captured footage of a peculiar-looking UFO that was spellbinding. So spellbinding that he pulled over to the side of the road to film it. According to a local media report, the sighting occurred last Monday afternoon as a witness, Tyson Wilson, was driving to his home city of Kelowna. The commute took a wondrous turn, he recalled, when at the top of his view of his windshield, he could see the reflection in the sky. Pulling over to get a better look at the anomaly, Wilson was bewildered by what he observed. I could see the thing flying around, he marveled. I didn't really know what I was looking at. Wilson indicated he was initially reluctant to come forward with his account of the strange sighting. However, his curiosity and the hope that someone could identify the mystifying anomaly eventually would prevail over his concerns about going public. Looking back on the experience, still puzzled witness mused, I think it was a UFO. I can't describe how bizarre what I was looking at. Here, we're just going to play the UFO beam footage here. If I can get my damn thing. This is from Coast to Coast on there. You can find the video, link through them. From, what's this? Castanets, whatever, YouTube. I don't know if you guys can see that. You can kind of like see it through the clouds. It reminds me of the movie Nope. That's a movie people either love or hate. I actually loved it. I don't know if you guys can see it. It doesn't come through the greatest on here. It should come. Do you guys see it, Jamie, Rob?
Yeah.
You can just like see it through the clouds. And that's what it reminds me of Nope, because that's all you like see the creature flying through the crowds. That's it on that one. All right, moving on. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
See if we could do it again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, whoop, go back. It's hard for me to even see on my screen. I know I could see it when I was editing the video, but it's like right in there, like coming away from, there it is. Yeah, I could see it through the trees. It's really faint there to see, but it's like through the clouds. Like I said, Coast to Coast has the article up, the link to the video if you want to see it for yourself.
Did you see it? Oh, I think I see it. I see it down.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
A little past the middle.
Like past the tree. Yeah, it's in the clouds there. And it's hard for people to see it on our share screen, so definitely go check it out Coast to Coast. All right. Let's see. On the next one. All right. So, I have not spent the $20 to rent The Age of Disclosure. Sue me. I'm not knocking on it. I don't blame anybody who does. I do want to see it. I just, it's Christmas time. I'm not supposed to spend money on myself. And, I want to rent it. I'm hoping maybe somebody will get it for free. Where is it? Why am I in the wrong thing here? No, there it is. Okay, there we go. But I always find the Joe Rogan interviews after these documentaries much more interesting, like the Bob Lazar movie, they did. I mean, nothing against Sharon Campbell, but I hated the narrator in that movie, and I found the interview he did with Bob Lazar and him with Joe Rogan was much more interesting. Well, this one, too, is interesting with the director from Age Disclosure. He was saying that U.S. nuclear testing was a secret attempt to disable UFOs, and I've always wondered that. I don't know if that would be the case. I think aliens are trying to tell us to stop doing it, for sure. And here we are talking about doing it again here now for some stupid reason. Dan Farrar has been in the news quite a bit recently thanks to the release of his new high-profile documentary, Age of Disclosure, which explores the world of UFOs, aliens, and government cover-ups. During a recent interview with Joe Rogan, Farrar put forward what is perhaps one of the most out-there claims about UFO phenomenons that we've heard of to date. and it's really not, though. U.S. atomic bombs testing in the 1950s, he argues, was actually an attempt to disguise the fact that the military was using nuclear weapons to take down UFOs. One of the realizations early on was the atomic weapon testing, nuclear weapon testing, has a ripple effect that can take these things down. That, I believe, is possible. Which is crazy on multiple levels. You could accidentally provoke a nuclear conflict with another party that doesn't know what you're doing. B, you're picking a fight with a more intelligent, superior species. Farrar maintains that there is a global race to reverse engineer alien technology, and that if the United States doesn't get its act together, another country will get there first. Secretary of State Mark Rubio literally says in the film, if we don't get our act together and take this more seriously as a country, we're going to wake up one day and we're going to find out that the hard way that China got there, he told Rogan. We won't know when or how, but to quote him, we'll be screwed. His chin buckled when he said it. He was dead serious, and he was super concerned, and you could feel it. China's going to get the alien technology, people. We need more military funding. Is that what we're going to get at? Because we got to reverse engineer this alien technology we don't have, or we've lied to you about for 70, 80 years. Give us more money. China's going to get there. China! All right, let's move on. Where is it? This one, I got two different share screens here. My thing, remove. Is this the next one? I am so lost. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it was the next one. Dang it. All right. Next up. Columbia, I think it was Columbia. Sportswear company challenges flat earthers to photograph planet's edge. Columbia CEO to flat earthers. Find the edge and I'll hand you the keys. Clever new marketing campaign from sportswear company Columbia offers flat earthers a sizable prize if they can produce a photograph of the edge of the planet. The amusing challenge was reportedly put forward by CEO Tim Boyle in an open letter published in the New York Times and a video released on Monday. This is a message to flat earthers, he wrote in the missive. I've seen your manifestos, admired your diagrams, watch you stand proudly on your wall, stand proudly on your, flat ground. So here's the deal. It's time to put your map where your mouth is. Boyle subsequently announced that the launch of what the company has dubbed Expedition Impossible, a challenge to the controversial conspiracy theorists to do what no one in history has ever done, find the edge of the earth. Should someone manage to pull off this unfathomable feat, the CEO said they would receive everything owned by the company. To those who might attempt to win the prize, Boyle smartly advised that they make the journey to the frosty forbidden zone in Columbia gear because it's tough enough for pretty much anything except maybe falling into the abyss. While Boyle's amusing video shows him promising all manners of materials found at the Columbia headquarters, a disclaimer attached to the content notes that the company refers to the company LLC with assets which are valued at $1 million. I think they're valued at more, so they get $1 million.
The Forbidden Zone?
Yeah, I mean, what happens when somebody, I don't know, dies in the Antarctica? Where would somebody go to prove this? I don't want to pick on flat earthers and people that believe in that.
No,
you know how I feel about it. I'm not going to down on it. You know how I feel. I've said it a billion times. We can have a conversation on here about it. I'm not a believer if you're new to the show, but
me neither. But I gotta still keep an open mind that.
Yeah, I mean, what if somebody does try to do this and they go somewhere? I don't know where they'd go, but they try to find the edge of the earth and they get killed doing it, and the family sues. I don't know. It seems like, are they that desperate to a marketing campaign? Really?
I know, what are they getting out of this? exposure for what? Like,
I don't know.
what's the
Somebody in
point?
their marketing campaign thought this was a good idea, I guess. Until somebody dies, and then that person's going to be out of a job.
It's all fun and games.
Right? All right, we got it. All right, next up. Fun times in the world here, and, on the verge of talking about turning pigeons into drones and stuff like that. Your military's come up with other fascinating things, and this one is one that really pisses me off. It's going to pull it up. Mind-altering brain weapons no longer only science fiction, says researchers. Oh, yeah, trust me, they've been working on this stuff for decades. The use of chemical weapons remains a major taboo, and wherefore something that no self-respecting country would ever want to be seen to be using, developing, or storing. Now, though, scientists have warned of the development of a whole new class of weapons, a brain weapon capable of impairing mind-altering effects on anyone, or unfortunately enough to be with a target. Don't judge me, but me and my 9-year-old, he's been reading Stephen King. Yeah, Mom, I know my mom's in there. Sound familiar? She took Cujo away from me about his age. And we wanted to watch Cell, which is one of the books he's looked at. We watched Cell, and then that is a signal that totally takes over people's minds from the cell phones. That's what I was thinking of this article. The warning comes courtesy of Michael Carley and Malcolm Dando, two British academics with Bradford University, whose work is intended to serve as a stark wake-up call to the whole planet. It does sound like science fiction, the danger that it becomes science fact. We are entering an era where the brain itself could become a battlefield. It already is. It already is. These guys are way behind it. It already is. You don't understand. It is. Everything is control of your mind. But yes, it's going to be much more worse than that, what these guys are talking about. Tools to manipulate the central nervous system to sedate, confuse, or even coerce are becoming more precise, more accessible, and more attractive to states. So, several countries, including China and the USSR, are they USSR? Is that what they're calling it? I guess they are. Okay. Have historically worked on developing such weapons, but now modern technology makes it far more likely that some will succeed. China and USSR, yeah, but us too. We can say, yeah, our enemies are doing it, and we are doing it. We've been doing it. We've been working on it for a long, long time. A long time. If you can neutralize your enemies without firing a shot, you'd think we wouldn't try to do it? We've been trying to do it. We have tons of different ways we've been looking at doing it. But it's coming. The problem is when you turn it on your own citizens is what I'm worried about. And that brings us to our last article. Have you guys seen or knew that there is a division of your Air Force that's a psychological operations unit, right? Well, they got to recruit like any other army unit, right? So that's what we got last year for the last article of the night is this. I want you guys to watch this. We don't have a lot of time, so I should just play this. This is the U.S. Army's not so secretive, PSYOP group releases chilling new video. All right, so here it is. Tell me what you think after.
Goddamn Army.
There's another force applied in combat that we generally don't think of as a weapon of war. That weapon is words. Words are weapons.
Telling the truth is the only way in which to influence people.
This is psychological warfare.
I gotta admit, I really do like their logo. It's pretty cool. Join PSYOP. Anybody knows their history of warfare and that we have been doing psychological operations, and we have every branch of the military has a unit or something like this for psychological operations. But did you see all the stuff in that trailer? The war is on your minds, my friends. The war is on your minds. okay? There's a military-industrial complex that wants to keep funded. They want their money. And the battlefield's not just in, I mean, wherever we're fighting, Ukraine now, right? Or, Afghanistan, we left all those weapons. It's not on any of those places. The war's here, people, over our minds. They've turned it on us a long time ago. A long time ago. The PSYOP's been happening. It's not just a branch of the military that has it. It's all of it. The CIA, all of them. They're all doing it. Why? For money, power, control. That's what it is. So question everything, trust no one. That's what I say. That's my motto. Don't believe anything you see in your media, news. Yeah, question it all, because it's all a big PSYOP. That is it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight's guest is Christopher Jones. We're going to talk about his new book, Palmistry of the Fingerprints, the secret patterns hidden in your fingers and your palms. And, of course, we'll have open phone lines later in the show if you guys want to call in and join the conversation with us and our guest, Christopher Jones. We got a lot to get to, but we'll be right back.
You were brought here for one purpose, necromancy.
A ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead.
No, please. No, please.
And death to the living. Necromancy. Starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama releasing. In color, rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Hello, I am Fernando Martinez. I think by now you know I am an emotional kind of guy. People stop me in the street and say, Fernando, what the hell is wrong with me? Silk shirt, hairy chest, enough aftershave to drown a household pet, but I still cannot get a woman. I tell them you are an ignorant fool. Without a symbol of power and fertility around your neck, what kind of woman is going to respect you? That is why I have teamed up with Medallion Man, the shop for medallion needs. Medallion Man caters to all levels of masculinity. For the strong, silent type, a medallion the size of a hubcap will say everything that needs to be said. Even singing medallions for the Casanova, who knows music is the food of love. Model trains, dollhouses, diapers, whatever your interest, we've got a medallion for you. Don't forget, every woman knows if you can't support a medallion, you can't support a family.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Christopher Jones. Christopher is one of the UK's leading figures in modern hand reading. Trained in the early 1980s under the UK, I'm going to get this wrong, I'm sure, Cheirological Society? I have no idea. We'll ask him. He became its first student to complete all advanced courses and later ran an organization for a decade. His work blends sociological, psychology, astrology, and historic Buddhist principles refined through postgraduate study in philosophy and theology at Oxford. A pioneering researcher and author of more than 15 study texts, Christopher has trained many of today's most respected international hand readers. In 2019, he co-founded the International Hand Reading Association, IHRA, promoting an ethical, research-driven approach to, what do you call it, chirology? Worldwide. I'm going to have to figure out what I've heard it. I don't know how you pronounce that. We're going to find out. But I've always been interested in this topic. I've never had a guest on it. And I've always wanted to understand, I believe that patterns are everywhere, that God speaks us through the most minute details or the force. And that'd be within the patterns of your hands, your skins, your fingerprints. We all talk about when we choose this life to come here and our life path and all this with different guests we've had. And maybe it's all mapped out there, right there in your hands. There's a lot of references throughout ancient lore and that about your hands and the importance of these lines. And people have been... you had fortune tellers using that, but that's not what it's about. We're going to find out so much more, I think, about that tonight. And we'll open up the phone lines for you guys to call in later. But I think this is going to be a great show, guys. So let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, let's bring him on. Hopefully. Oh, there we go. Hi, Christopher. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, Jason. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I was just watching a bit of your previous stuff there, and you've got quite a wide range of interesting and diverse perspectives on life, the universe, and everything. So,
it just falls in the lines of trust no one, believe nothing, suspect everything. Ask a lot of questions.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. You can't.
But I also believe in the possible. I also believe in the impossible. I also believe that the impossible is possible. I'm open-minded to all of it. And I've always been interested in this idea that there's things you can tell from people within the patterns of their hand.
Yeah, it's a very, very ancient notion. People talk about hand reading as if it's been around for thousands of years, and it may be, and we don't really know. I did a lot of study in the history of hand reading many years ago. The oldest manuscript I found was dated from 1160. And that was that's a European Latin tradition, was found in the libraries of Oxford University. There are traditions that go back beyond that in India and China, but there's very little material that's still left from that. So there's all these mythologies about the ancients studied hand reading. Aristotle was a hand reader. Alexander the Great read hand. Julius Caesar great. We don't know. There's anecdotal stories about that. We've got no kind of proof of that whatsoever because there's nothing written that's survived till today. But we do know that hands have always been fascinating for people, and right from the earliest cave paintings that you get in caves of France, where people do stencils of their hands, and clearly the hands are absolutely instrumental for everything that we do in our lives. So the fascination is obvious.
Well, like I said, in my intro, we have on the show, we talk about a lot of things like past lives and what the soul is, and what people believe they pick their life path when they come here. And I'm a big believer in synchronicity, and that what I call force or the God communicates to us through the smallest little things.
Yeah.
And, why not give us some kind of clue or idea of who we are in the imprint of our skin?
That's interesting. I mean, that's interesting you take that stance, because that's exactly what it says in the Bible. For example, there's a very famous passage in the book of Job, Job 37:7, which says, "He sealeth up the hand of every man, so that every man might to know his work."
Right.
And when I was studying theology at Oxford, I was able to talk to the guy who actually eventually became the Archbishop of Canterbury in the UK, but he was my tutor at Oxford. And I said, "What's the original Greek version of this? What did it say in the original Greek?" And he translated it. And he basically said, it's a way to articulate the fact that God puts a mark in each person so that he knows what their role is in life. I mean, that's essentially what that passage refers to if you take contextually in the Bible context. So there's this notion that the body is imprinted with a kind of divine signature, runs throughout the palmistic literature in Europe right through to the 18th century. In modern times, it's not emphasized quite so much, but that view is prevalent in the ancient texts, and it's also prevalent in the Buddhist texts as well. So, and in Vedic texts. So, in Vedic texts, they look for signs of spiritual development. In the Buddhist tradition, there's this notion that there are the 32 marks of the Superman, as they call it, which is a sign of someone who's going to be reincarnated as a bodhisattva and then come back as the Buddha. So this notion that the body kind of contains marks or indicators of spiritual attainment or God's will for you is actually extant within all of that literature across all those cultures over thousands of years. So that notion you just articulated is a very prevalent one in those particular cultures. So,
well, you said 1170, right, is when like the earliest like literature you could find on actual like palm reading, right? What I've always wondered about it is like who correlated the data.
Yeah.
Like who figured out what line was what, or was it given to them? Was it not? Because you have some people, we have, different things that some knowledge we just know, we've been told came from, somebody downloaded it, got it from the Akashic records or whatever. Was it given to somebody, or did somebody literally start like you've done these studies where you're comparing different people over time and period, and how what I find really interesting is the part where you talk about it changes, like people's hands change, that the patterns change. We can get into that tonight too, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it's so fascinating to me that that they knew, or somebody had to have correlated this data, right, to figure out.
Well, that's a really good question, and that's something that I think a lot about, because when you look at I can't speak too much about Indian and Chinese traditions of hand reading. That's not the area that I've particularly studied. But if you look at European traditions of hand reading, there are very distinct phases of it. There's a sort of early medieval period, there's a Renaissance period, then there's a gap of about 200 years, then there's the Victorian occult era, and then there's the modern era. So you can look at the different ages of hand reading in that way. And what's interesting about them is they all have very different approaches to looking at the hand. So in modern times, we look at the fingerprint patterns, and the fingerprint patterns are to do with genetics, to do with your sort of physiological forces within your body. And that's why my current book that's out, it's called The Palmistry of Fingerprints, because it's really looking at emphasis on fingerprint patterns and the significance of those. But in the Victorian period, which is when palmistry was revived from about 1839 to about 1910, fantastic, enormous revival of palmistry in France, in England, and in America as well, actually, in Chicago and New York. They were very interested in the idea of physiognomy, and again, particularly the occult phenomena to do with Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society, the Chirological Society, which is, you mentioned earlier on, it's actually chirology, like chiropractic.
Chirology? Like a chiropractor.
Chirology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chirology.
But the Chirological Society was founded in 1889, and that group of people all knew Annie Besant and Blavatsky from the Theosophical Society. They were all kind of friends together in that sort of 19th century occult revival. But in Renaissance times, they used astrology to interpret the hand. So when you look at, if you go back to the 15th century and 16th century and 17th century, there's this kind of conflation between astrology and hand reading. And palmistry was considered to be a sort of junior subject to astrology. And you've got people like William Lilly, Sir John Dee, all these kind of characters in the 17th century who are magicians and herbalists. Nicholas Culpeper was part of that group, Elias Ashmole, Richard Saunders, George Wharton. There was this kind of a group of occultists who were based in Oxford. And they synthesize the knowledge of Hermetic knowledge and herbalism and astrology and hand reading all together. And so you get these books published at that time, which is an amalgamation of all those things. So they're looking at it from an astrological point of view. But prior to that, the earliest text, which is from about 1160 to about 1450, they're looking at it from a theological point of view. So the academic climate of Europe is very much influenced by the Roman Catholic Church. Until the Renaissance, the Roman Catholic Church dominates everything. So the oldest manuscript we've got was found in a monastery, in the monastery of Canterbury.
So monks.
And yeah, it was written by monks. Yeah, it was written by monks. And what they're interested in there is things like, are you blessed by God? Right. So they were particularly concerned with what they call the Great Triangle, which is a formation of the line formations that make a big triangle in the hand. And they were interested in that because as Catholics, the Great Triangle was a symbol of the Holy Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. So if you had the Great Triangle well formed in your hand, what that indicated was that you were blessed by God. You were God was with you, and God had left his mark on you and would support you. And then they would look for signs of the cross in the hand as well. So this notion that crosses are really bad when people talk about the lines of the hand is to do with this tradition from the 13th and 12th centuries, where if you saw the sign of the cross, of course, it meant the sign of death because Jesus died on the cross. Right. So that's, you ask yourself the question, how do they come up with this? Well, they had a worldview, and then they imposed that worldview on the things on the hand and interpreted it from that point of view. So they saw crosses, that was a sign of death. They saw triangles, that was a sign of being blessed by God. If they saw features on this particular area, it would show you get promoted to become a bishop, and that sort of thing. So that's what they were concerned with. Whereas the astrological chiromancers were looking in terms of like astrological influences, and the occultists in the 19th century were looking at things like powers and psychic ability and whether you could talk to ascended masters. And then modern hand readers look at it in terms of genetics, karma, psychology. So the frames of reference really determine how you see the picture of the hand and therefore kind of what their significance is.
Well, the data collection I talked about sounds like everything you just described. It went from, the 1100s, to them trying to put their own perspective on it, theologically on it, to astrological and what can we really do with this, or
Yeah, and that evolution is important to notice because it's very much a product of the framework that they're using it. So, and of course, depending upon the science of the time as well. I mean, I'm very concerned to produce a methodology with the hand reading that's actually accurate and describes people and describes what they do and what's going on in their lives, and in a way that can be pragmatically helpful. It's not particularly helpful to say, oh my goodness, like you're blessed by God, but hey, you're going to die by sea at sea because you've got a cross in the mount of the moon. I mean, nobody wants to know.
We're going to make you a bishop. You got the right thing on your hand. We don't care what kind of jerk you are.
That's not the theme, But in the 15th century, I mean, in the 15th century, life was nasty, brutal, and short. You had, the life expectancy in Europe was about 30 years.
Yeah, they didn't have much time to figure things out, right? So,
everyone was going to die very quickly, nastily. They were going to go to war. They're going to get disease. The Black Plague was coming. So, death one of the classic ones in the medieval text is death by childbirth, and of course that would have been an extraordinary common thing for women in the 15th century. But this whole idea that, you can see death in the hand is a product of the fatalistic way that people lived in those days.
It's also, I mean, one of the things is that people still look at it as fortune telling, that palm reading is fortune telling or psychic or predicting your life and stuff like that it's not.
Well, that's also a legacy of that 15th century viewpoint. Right. So I kind of try to point out to people politely, your view is about 500 years out of date. We've kind of moved on a bit since then. It's kind of like it has evolved since then. And that's why I choose to talk about the fingerprints and the Palmistry of Fingerprints. My book really focuses on the fingerprints because one of the things that people don't realize is that, I mean, we take fingerprints for granted these days, right? So, people will open their phones with their fingerprint, or they've got biosecurity measures at airports and stuff like that.
We convicted people on it, and
we
executed people on it.
Do you know when the police started using fingerprints for forensic purposes?
Well, it wasn't until the early 1900s, wasn't it? Like
No,
1920?
early 20th century. Early 20th century. Scotland Yard only started
Oh yeah,
using
Scotland
fingerprint
Yard. Yeah, of
identification
course. I knew it was
in
Scotland Yard.
1901. 1901.
Oh, so it was right. I was right. It was like early
You said
1900s.
19th
Like,
century. That's
not 19. I said 1900s. I didn't century. I meant sorry.
Okay, all right. Go a bit.
But not century. I said hundreds.
Yeah, but it's recent. The point is that's quite recent.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that when you look at the occultists, and the handreaders in the 19th century, William Benham, Cairo, who's probably the most famous palmist, or Comte de Saint-Germain in Chicago, or William Benham in New York, they don't talk about fingerprints. They're looking at hands, right?
Right.
They're even taking handprints. And you can look in their books and you can see the handprints and you can see the fingerprints, but they don't talk about them at all.
Yeah.
It's like it's not on their radar. It's not important to them. It's not significant. They don't know anything about it. They kind of can't even see them.
Well, then maybe they don't understand the coding. I always look at it as like it's a kind of a coding.
That's a human consciousness thing, because fingerprints classification only came about in 1892. So the first book on fingerprint classification was written by a guy called Francis Galton. And so it's only in the 1890s that you get a kind of scientific appraisal of the significance of fingerprints and their proper classification. There's very little literature before that about fingerprint patterns. And what's interesting about the fingerprints is that Galton, he was actually the cousin of Charles Darwin. And he was interested in the sort of anthropometric analysis of human beings to try and work out what goes on inside them. So you've got this attempt to kind of like do what I call psychophysiognomy. So you get phrenology, anthropometry, chirology, and semantoglyphics. Yeah, the bumps on the head is phrenology. Yeah, they're desperately trying to work out how to understand what goes on inside people. This is very much a scientific endeavor in the late 19th century, and they're using the physical form to measure people. So they're looking at proportions of the body, looking at the shape of the head. They're looking at the hands, and that's where it kind of comes from. Can we look at the shape of the hand and the features of the hand? Will that tell us something about the inner workings of the person? And it's important to remember that the unconscious hadn't been discovered yet. Freud, who is clearly
that's a good point.
has recognized as being the guy who kind of discovered the significance of the unconscious with his interpretation of dreams. That book didn't come out till 1895. So like there is no awareness of the inner psychic world of human experience until that time. So they're going, well, how can we measure that? Well, we want to measure it by the physical form. And so this notion of fingerprints doing that comes out of that same tradition. And they were really hoping to kind of be able to classify people using fingerprint patterns. I mean, there was a racial overtone to the work that Galton was doing. He founded the chair of eugenics at London University.
Oh,
which
geez.
was, I know, but that was a chair that existed for 50 years until 1945. Yeah. The notion that they had, was a kind of evolutionary biology, sort of following on from the work of Charles Darwin. Like there are markers in our hands that are indicative of who and what we are. And there were studies done comparing the hands of apes with the hands of human beings, for example. So that's a very important kind of, that primatology is a very important aspect of the study of fingerprint patterns, because apes have fingerprints too. Gorillas have fingerprints, chimpanzees have fingerprints, orangutans have fingerprints, all the apes have fingerprints. And there's one other animal, bizarrely, there's one other animal in the animal kingdom that has fingerprints, and you won't know what it is, so I won't say guess because you won't guess. It's the koala bear in Australia. The koala bear has fingerprints too. So we're the only creatures that have fingerprints, human beings, the anthropoid apes, and for some strange reason, koala bears.
So they have to be an offshoot of something that we all came from to share that, right?
Yeah, there are theories about that from the sort of scientific point of view, but there is an observation that there are features on the palms of our hand which are unique to humans and the apes, basically, and therefore the question is there something significant about them? And following Galton, there was then been a sort of 100 years of a study of the genetic and the medical significance of fingerprint patterns, and I include a whole chapter in my book about that on the Palmistry of Fingerprints, about the genetics of fingerprint patterns, what they mean from a physiological point of view, but as well as the psychology and the interpretation of it. There is actually a kind of a genetic and physiological significance to fingerprints too. So they followed up on studies that were being done by John Langdon Down in the 19th century, where he's the guy who discovered the condition that's known as Down syndrome or trisomy 21.
Yeah.
And they obviously didn't know it was a chromosomal disorder back in the 1890s, but they recognized that there were very distinctive physical characteristics of people with Down syndrome. And we all know what they are, and we also know that they're very emotionally effusive people, and we also know that they're cognitively challenged people. And they also don't live very long. I mean, they live longer now, but back in the day, you know, most Down syndrome people.
Well, a lot of times the conditions they made them live in half the time.
Yeah, but also it's also because of congenital health conditions they have. They have congenital heart weakness. They get dementia early, and so on and so forth. But they live long enough that their hands can be studied, and we all know what a Down syndrome person looks like, because we see them occasionally anyway. And they got better life expectancy now because there's better care for them than there was 100 years ago. But but where they didn't know at that time that the Down syndrome was caused by a genetic mutation of the 21st chromosome. So they didn't know that, you know. So, but what they've done is they've built up this whole body of evidence to say, this is the kind of hand that you find in someone who's got Down syndrome. And it is the most studied hand of all hands in any kind of discipline anywhere else, including palmistry, including chiromancy, including chirology. It's been medically analyzed for 100 years. And there was this guy in England called Lionel Penrose in the 60s and 70s. He ran a genetic screening center just outside London, and he worked out the statistical analysis of the patterns of the hand to be able to look at the hands of the parents to work out the chances and the probabilities of them producing a Down syndrome child on the basis of the analysis of the features of their hands alone. I mean, that's extraordinary, you know, that can be done, and it was done, and that center ran for about 20 or 30 years.
So he could basically look at the parents' hands and be like, you have this percentage of chance to have a Down syndrome kid from the
exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Well, think of,
Was
everything
it successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. Was he successful in that?
Yes, he was. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I figured
it was a professional practice. I mean,
right.
People paid vast sums of money to go to him to have that test done.
But you know what, DNA down at is a set of coding.
Yeah.
And everything else is a refraction of that. You know what I'm saying? Out to your skin. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, to me that all makes sense that you could tell these things, that there is some kind of pattern or shape to this, because that's all about the coding of your DNA.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And once, see, that kind of study really changes the basis by which you will do hand reading. You know, the early medieval is based upon theology and belief in God, and particularly the Christian God. The Renaissance period, it depends upon astrology and, you know, your relationship to astrology, and the 19th century is all about that occultic thing. So I mean, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of those, but I'm saying if you want one that's kind of based in science, then that's what happens when you start looking at the genetics of fingerprint patterns. And so what I've been doing in the last 40 years is developing this sort of approach to hand reading that embraces all of those traditions, but says which one of these has the most empiric basis, which one of these is the most accurate, which one of these is most useful, and for analyzing different characteristics of people's hands. So if we know that the hand has a strong genetic component, and it must do, and I mean it's because if you look at fingerprint patterns are genetically inherited. So there are 7 types of fingerprint patterns, and people they go in different distributions amongst different people. So if you've got a certain pattern in your hand, it's likely your parents will have that pattern. So fingerprint patterns are inherited, and your children will have those patterns too. So you can look at family lines, and you could look at the genetic inheritance of fingerprint patterns. But it's not just the fingerprints, it's also the lines. The lines are also inheritable features as well. So, I mean, they come, I think, through a slightly different mechanism, but we understand this from these kind of studies, and that's the importance of the Down studies and the Down syndrome.
Share a picture of your book here that we're talking about.
I wanted to look up.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I wanted to ask, too, about people with, say, witches in their bloodline or things like that. Does that carry through on their hands? Like
I don't know, because I haven't studied witches in their bloodline. I mean, if you can give me some 7 generations of witches, I will gladly look at their hands.
It would be an interesting study, though.
but absolutely. The point in principle, though, the point is, in principle, yes, it could show that, because you can see the inheritance of features. So just to answer that question in a kind of more general way, there are definite features in the hand that show like psychic and intuitive abilities, and I'm confident about those. I did a big study on it about 30 years ago, and I've managed to replicate those studies again and again and over the decades. And we know that there are certain skin ridge like patterns, like dermatoglyphic patterns in the palm, because you get fingerprints not just on the fingers, but you get them in the palm as well, that correlate with that kind of psychic sensitivity and intuitive receptivity that gives people that kind of ESP, or that ability to sense things about people or to communicate with beings in other dimensions and so on. And you know, we know what those features of the hand are. And I did a study last year, actually, which I presented at the International Hand Reading Association conference, on the hands of shamans and channelers. And I just was like, I just happened to have bumped into a lot of people who are shamanic practitioners in the last couple of years. And I collected all their handprints, and lo and behold, they all had this same feature in their hand. It was like uncanny. I was like, you're absolutely kidding me. I mean, I live in New Zealand. There are not many people who walk around as, you know, shamanic healers and channelers in this country. It's a small country. There's only 5 million people in the country. And I happened to bump into like half a dozen of them. You're like, what the heck is going on? You know, and they all had exactly the same feature in their hand. And what was interesting about it was a kind of development of the study that I'd done 30 years ago, where I kind of suggested this pattern would be significant, but I'd never found enough examples of it at that time. And then suddenly I found a whole bunch of people who had that same pattern. So because we know that fingerprint patterns and palmar dermatoglyphic patterns are inheritable, they are genetic, this is likely that would be passed down from mother to daughter to father to son through the generations. So that kind of thing, I'm sure, could be done if you had the handprints of those different generations. Cool. You could see that.
Because I have seen a lot of people who have similar backgrounds that they claim this and that, who have similar markings, especially when it comes to these crosses, these X's, and
the crosses are, honestly, the crosses are not important. Really, the crosses are not important.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I tell you why they're not important. I tell you what, it's really, when you understand this, it makes a huge difference to your understanding what's significant in the hand and not, is that the lines of the hands change over time.
Right.
This is something I discuss in the beginning of the book, kind of because I don't talk about the lines in this book at all. The Palmistry of Fingerprints is all about the fingerprint patterns, but I start by saying, well, are you thinking about hand reading? You're thinking about the lines, aren't you? Well, let me just show you. The lines aren't that important because the lines change.
I meant X's, my mistake.
I understood what you meant, but all those things like crosses and X's, those are the lines of the smallest lines on the hand. They're the ones that change most rapidly. So those line formations can come and go within like 3-month period. So if you take the handprints of people, I mean, they come and go to do with things like levels of stress. They come and go to do with things like hormonal changes. If you take the handprints of a woman before, during, and after pregnancy, her body gets more stressed because she's carrying another being inside her, and her liver's overworking because it's squeezing all the waste for the baby, and so on and so forth. She's eating more. She's under a lot of stress. Her body is under a lot of stress, and there's lots of hormonal changes going on in her. And you see that in the lines of the hands change. And then when she's stopped being pregnant, they all go away again. So things like crosses, the really minor lines like the crosses and the squiggles and stuff like that, they come and go really, really quickly to do with levels of stress.
That's what I was curious about.
They're the things not to focus on. So what I've done is I've created a kind of hierarchy within the hand. Like what most important must be the things that stay the same the whole time. And what we know about fingerprint patterns is they don't change over time. You know, you're born with your fingerprint patterns, and they set at about between the 16th and the 24th week of gestation, so about 4 to 6 months of fetal life, and they never change for the whole of your life. They remain completely unchanged, and so they therefore must be more important as indicators of your kind of soul incarnation than the things that are fleeting, that are changing. You know, if anything's significant in your consciousness, it can't be something that's easily affected by your menstrual cycle, or whether you're going through menopause, or whether you're just having a hard time at work and you're really stressed out, you know. So like those are the incidental things, but those are the things that the lines show.
Well, if you're reading somebody, you wanted to tell them things that are going on currently with them, then those lines would be helpful, But
Yeah, sure.
when you're
But
trying to do the
they
deep,
know they know
look,
they're stressed, or they know they're pregnant,
right,
or they know,
right,
or if she's a 53-year-old woman, she knows she's going through menopause. She
right,
doesn't need you to condescendingly tell her that.
yeah.
I got into trouble with that one a few times.
Are you
But
getting
it's like,
hot flashes? I can see the look on the woman's face.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. Shut up, man! Don't fucking mansplain me. Yeah, exactly. But it's true. But it's true. I did a study because I've been doing handling a really long time. It's what's quite fun about having done it a long time. I was 20 when I started doing hand reading, and I got two sisters, and they got lots of friends. So I took my sisters' handprints and their friends' handprints, and other women that I knew in the 1980s. So these were young women in their sort of between the ages of say 20 and 25. But because they were family friends and things like that, I still knew them, So
yeah.
in 2018, 2019, I went back to the UK and I went and saw as many of them because I took their handprints again. So all these women were now, 55, 53, that sort of age. And what was interesting that was many of them had got married, they were professionals. They had a degree, they had professional careers, in television, in computer science, in as medical doctors, whatever. They all got married. They're all living in the same house as they were living in 20 years ago. They all had children who are now grown up. They're all married to the same person. In other words, so many things in their lives had remained constant for 30 years. But all of them had gone through menopause, and all of them showed exactly the same changes in the lineations on their hands, on their fingers, that was most of the other things in the lines of the hand hadn't changed very much at all. And so that was a really good confirmation of the kind of endocrinological changes and how those mark within the palms of the hand. So that's kind of, that's the significance of the lines, really. They are reflections of the fluctuations of stress levels, hormonal levels, endocrinological health levels. Health and illness is another big thing with the lines of the hand. And obviously those things fluctuate throughout our lives. So I think, but that's why I focus on the fingerprint patterns, because you want to kind of help people understand the kind of the driving motivational forces in their life, and that gives them a sense of direction and purpose in their life. And the Palmistry of Fingerprints is really trying to look at the fingerprints and say, what does this say about your psychology? What does this say about your personality? What does this say about your skills and abilities? What does this say about the psychological challenges you're going to experience in your life? What do they tell us about your kind of the evolution of your soul in this world? Because that's what I really think the fingerprints are. They're kind of a deeply embedded imprint of consciousness in the physical form of our body. We talked about it before as DNA, having a sort of
base coding. It's it doesn't change.
Exactly. So if we can unlock what that coding is and understand its effects within us, then that gives us an ability to navigate life in a way that's kind of in accordance with our inner essence.
Right.
And that's what the hand shows us. It shows us kind of what our inner essence is. I mean, the most common thing that people say after they've had a hand reading with me or one of my colleagues is they say, I feel seen. I feel like you've got me. I feel like you understand me. I feel more understood now than I've been understood by anybody else. It's like they feel really seen at a very deep level, like they've been met and encountered, and you've described their experience of life. They describe their experience of how they view life and how they are in the world, and that's an incredibly profound experience for people. But it allows them to kind of let their life unfold the way that they want their life to be. So, for example, most of us have come out of school, we've been, browbeaten with this education. Sometimes we can call it propaganda, to be thinking about the world in a particular kind of way, and we're told we must do this, we must do that, and it's all about what we take from the outside. So we develop an identity that kind of is conforming to that. Our identity is formed by our parents, our schooling, our peers, by social media, by television, and all the rest of it. It gets worse from there. But let's just start with the simple ones. And that forges a person's sense of who they are, and they kind of, I have to function in the world this kind of way. But if that description doesn't match up with the person's inner felt experience of themselves, then they go, there's something wrong, there's something not right, I don't know, I don't feel right. And people either have mental illness issues, or they feel traumatized, or they feel that they're working against themselves, or they're beating themselves up, and then they get to the end of their working life and they go, what the hell was that for? I haven't been me. You know, nobody on their gravestone ever puts, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. Everybody says, I wish I'd spent more time being me, having the courage to do what things I wanted to do, to spend time with my family and friends, whatever, travel more, whatever it is. But you can see what those things are in the hand, and you can encourage people. Say, look, dude, don't worry about how you're supposed to be in the world. These are the directives you got. These are the cards you've got. You know, you've got the ace of spades and the queen of diamonds and a run of clubs.
Work with what you
Go and
got.
play your hand. This is what you got to work with that. You know, don't try and, you know, don't try and be, you know, like the model of success that society says you need to be. If that's not you, that's not you. But don't let that fuck you up. So it allows you to kind of, it liberates people from the socially conditioned sense of their identity. That's probably the most powerful thing about handreading, because it's not looking at what the outside world is expecting of you or telling you should be. It's like, what is your inner realm saying about you, and what's coming?
Well, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. I mean, that is. Well, you're trying to, like, I mean, because we're so bombarded. I had a moment of realization in my life at one point where I felt like everybody I was becoming the picture of what people thought I was, you know, but I wasn't. You know what I'm saying? I had that realization that this is just a facade or a fake ego. That's not even my real ego. That's not who I am. And a wake up call, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and so what we can see in the hand, we can see why that happens to people. Sometimes it's to do with constitutional factors, like the fingerprints might indicate that kind of disposition to be something of a mimic, for example. Or the lines can show in the hand. The lines could show that there was some kind of trauma. You know, if you've had a terrible childhood, you've been abused in some kind of way, or you were beaten by your father, or you were sexually abused as a girl, as a young woman, you know, that's going to so devastate your psyche in lots of different kinds of ways. You may never be able to, you're trapped within that. It may be very difficult for you to be something that you originally were going to be, because you've just had the sort of the life force or the enthusiasm beaten out of you. And like you've been told to conform in certain kind of way, and that incentive to conform is built into the kind of, you know, authoritarian nature of capitalist economic structures, because they want us to be working for them. They don't want us to be creative, liberated individuals. No, that doesn't make you a good worker, you know. So chirology is essentially kind of an anti-establishment attitude, really. It's like saying, we want to be you. What is it? In what way are you unique and different? And again, that's why we go back to the fingerprint patterns, right? So in the Palmistry of Fingerprint patterns, I talk about the fingerprint, because everybody's fingerprints are unique. Nobody has your fingerprint patterns. In fact, not even identical twins have identical fingerprint patterns. So if your fingerprint patterns are unique, maybe, just maybe, I'm going out on a limb here, a bit of a guess. Maybe they say something that's unique about you. I don't know. Doesn't sound reasonable. Does that sound reasonable? I don't know. I mean, that's the point. Is they are descriptors of your unique identity, and we know they show your identity because we use them for identification purposes, because they don't change over time. So the fingerprints are a really powerful expression of what it is to be uniquely you. And if we can unlock that pattern, if we can understand what those patterns signify, then we are able to help people unlock that mystery in their own life, so they can be uniquely them and fulfill the qualities they got. I've got a really good friend. I'll give you a good example. I'll give you a really good friend of mine. She's in her 60s. She's a medical doctor. She worked at Bastyr University in Oregon. So she was an academic for most of her years, and she's an MD and an ND. So she's massively scientifically qualified. Her father worked for NASA, you know, so she got that incredibly scientific background. And all her life, she wanted to be an artist. And I met her about 7-8 years ago. And the first thing I saw in her hand said, well, you've got this amazing thing in your hand that says you're like an inspirational artist. And she said, she got her jaw dropped, and she had just started painting. She just picked up a paintbrush, and she was just painting her very first painting, and that's what she does all the time now. So for 40 years of her adult life, she wasn't fulfilling an equality and ability, a skill set that she had, because her upbringing, her father encouraged her to do science training, and she ended up choosing medicine. But you know, that was the background and encouragement that she had. And it's only become in her late adult life that she's actually turned to the thing that makes her life more meaningful than anything else. And that's really, I think, is really a very pertinent lesson for everybody. It's like, do we want to live in a society that's about the extractive qualities, where the very rich are extracting our labor and our resources and the natural resources for their benefit? Or do we want to do something that brings us joy and is meaningful to us? And if we want the latter, well, then we need to find a way in which we can understand what it is in the hand, what it is in us that will give us joy and give us that kind of meaning. And the hand is just one of the tools, I think, that really shows that par excellence.
Well, yeah, I'm a big Star Trek fan. And I love in Star Trek movie First Contact, there's a whole conversation between Picard and this other character when she's asking him, because they're in the past or whatever, and she's asking him, how does the future work with no money? Right? And he's like, people pursue their talents and their dreams and contribute, with that, what they're best suited to, what they want to pursue. And she just looks at him like, you're crazy. Crazy. Yeah. But I mean, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing if we could look and see, like, hey, no, this is what you should be gifted for. Why don't you try that and do that and contribute to society with whatever that is?
Yeah, I personally think we had an opportunity to do that in the 1960s, and I think we can point the blame at Richard Nixon, apart from anyone else, as a kind of someone who shut a lot of those particular doors. But yeah, it's a kind of interesting kind of opportunity that arises when you have a kind of social equality, and it's an economic fact that the time in the world where there was more social equality than any other time in history was between 1945 and 1973. When the tax rate in the United States was 94%.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because they provided social welfare programs, they wanted to provide health programs, they wanted to provide work opportunities by doing a lot of big building work and stuff like that, building all the roads, all the motorways, that doesn't come from nowhere. But if you've got everybody contributing to a pot in the society, then you have an opportunity.
Oh yeah, I mean, when they had that time period, there was towns that were still like, they didn't look any different than they did 100 years before, where they had no working water and buildings. People were living in shanties and stuff like that. They're between the 45 and 70s. There was a lot of work and money spent to actually bring these communities and out of the Stone Age.
And that's about raising up everybody, which is and if you raise up everybody, then you've got a greater chance of bringing a kind of meaningful experience for everybody. I think it's a really important thing. And in looking hand reading, we take it from a very individual point of view. It's like, and I think it's worth reiterating. What we're seeing in the hand is, I feel like, it's kind of potential. I mean, I can't, you can't do prediction from the hand for lots of reasons, but one of the basic reasons is because you could see someone who could be a fantastic artist, but if they're in an economic situation which demands that they go and work, and there's no other job apart from working in the factory, and they've got 3 kids to feed and so on and so forth, then it doesn't matter whether they want to be an artist.
Hitler was an artist. Hitler was an artist, He went on to do other things. It would have been great if he just did paintings like Bob Ross, but,
Yeah.
Maybe if he had his palm read.
Yeah, well, he probably did, actually. Those guys were quite interested in all this stuff. The point is that there has to be the opportunity to do that, and you can see someone's got skills and abilities from the hand. I mean, you asked a question like, what kind of things can you see from the hand? And I was thinking about that. I was thinking, well, maybe I could just tell you a few things about a few of the hand readings I've been doing recently, because they kind of give you some kind of idea of the sort of range and scope. So I did a hand reading a couple of days ago, a young woman, and basically I basically worked out from her hand in a few minutes that she worked in the law, and she's actually a lawyer, and she worked in commercial law. And that was kind of a relatively easy thing to work out from the hand. So working out what job someone does is often quite straightforward to do from the hand. And I've got that handprint set up for my students.
I mean, there's a lot of different jobs out there, but there's certain signatures somebody has for a profession on their fingerprints.
Absolutely. I'm going to give those I've got my students. I've got a meeting with my students in a week or so. I'm going to give them that handprint. And if they can't work it out within 10 minutes that she's a lawyer, then I shall slap them and send them to the bottom of the class. Exactly. No, and in fact, one of those students has already sent me her notes. What do you think? Have I done? I didn't answer her, but she did say, "I think she's a lawyer." She literally wrote that. So this is a woman.
You
This
got
is a woman
one.
who studied with me. Yeah, but she's only been studying handwriting for a year. Like she's still a beginner, and she managed to work it out. So that's what I'm saying. It's actually relatively easy to work out. You know, you might not be able to say, "Oh, you should do commercial law," or "You should do litigation," or whatever. You might to get the general field. I think is good enough. You know. So that's one thing. But the second thing I said to her, okay, tell me about your grandmother. Because what I could see in her hand was the abusive relationship that her grandmother had had on her mother.
Like
So
you can tell like the grandmother female, not grandfather, right? There's things in there.
Well, I knew it was because of the hand features, I knew it was the grandmother and not the grandfather. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But what I could see in the hand was the psychological. So you got a difference between the left hand and the right hand. Okay. So if you're working out what someone does in their job, what you want to look at the dominant hand. So the dominant hand is the hand that someone uses every day. So that generally expresses the qualities that we articulate in the world, and the kind of work that we do in the world. Okay, so that's the outwardly expressed hand. But the passive hand, the non-dominant hand, that shows kind of inherited characteristics that we've got from our family and from our ancestors. So one of the things that's really clear to see is intergenerational trauma. So you can see childhood trauma in the hand. I mean, there's another thing you can see. I mean, it's actually quite easy to work out whether a woman has been sexually abused from the hand. Particularly in childhood sexual abuse is relatively easy to identify from the hand. I mean, obviously that's an incredibly delicate subject, and you have to proceed into that area very, very carefully. But can it be seen in the hand? Yes, it can. You know, can emotional neglect be seen in the hand? Yes, it can. Can the effects of an alcoholic father and violence be seen in the hand? Yes, it can. So all those kind of childhood experiences get recorded in the structure and the shape of the fingers and the lines of the hand, not the fingerprints, of course, because they don't change, but the features of the hand that they kind of record those kind of experiential events. If it's in the active hand, that's happened to that person in this lifetime, in their childhood. But if it's in the passive hand, it happened to their mother. So what I could see in the passive hand was the effects of this woman growing up with a woman who had been emotionally and psychologically abused by her grandmother, by her mother. Her mother abused this mother, and the legacy effects upon this woman here. So you could actually follow the line of intergenerational trauma. Wow. And I didn't know this, but this woman was Ukrainian, and her grandmother was Russian. And of course, if we're talking grandmother, we're talking in the Soviet era. So this was, and so the kind of violence and lack of emotional sensitivity, the condition of the kind of harsh social and economic conditions that woman was brought up in. Living in Ukraine in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s would have been absolutely terrible, you know, and that's when that woman would have been alive.
World War II.
You know, you're in the Stalin regime. You got the pogroms, you got the collectivization, the farming, you got the mass starvation of Ukrainians that goes on in the 1930s, and as well as the Second World War. I mean, you know, it's a horrendous time to be alive. Yeah. You've got hardened people who are traumatized and you know have severely psychologically damaged. And that woman severely psychologically damaged her daughter, and that's recorded in this woman who's 33 in her hand.
It makes you realize that evil things done on people, on their children, or that this is carried through the DNA. This is carried down the line, emotional trauma. Yeah, exactly. It's you know, and we're talking about trauma. I mean, you know, there's no Victorian palmists who talk about trauma. They don't talk about trauma in Renaissance chiromancy. This is a very modern idiom. You know, we can talk about trauma now because that's something that's been a part of the popular discourse for the last 10 or 15 years. People like Gabor Mate and has really brought that conversation to the fore. I mean, it's interesting because I actually observed these features in the hand 35 years ago, but I didn't have the languaging for it. I didn't have the way. I knew I could see sexual abuse in the hand when I started looking at hands in the 90s, and I could see these kind of patterns, but I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't really understand how those things will be recorded in the body. But that's exactly what, that's the notion of the body knows the score. We have this notion that the body stores trauma. We have this notion that those kind of experiences reside within the physical form of the body. And there's all sorts of psychological therapies that are based around kind of creating emotional releases of that trauma from the physical body. So if it stores in the body, why wouldn't it be stored in the hand?
You know, it's like it's part of the body. You know, so it's kind of like, and so what I know. And this is, for me, this is a relatively new discovery, is looking at this intergenerational trauma and seeing how, you know, things that happened in this hand are a reflection of what happened to the mother. And the woman is carrying it because she was brought up in the environment of that traumatized mother who was traumatized by her mother. You know, so you got that kind of context. And then she, in her life, she's got to make her life work according to that. And you could see the emotional insecurities this woman had. You know, she had, there was a timidity, there was a lack of emotional openness and a kind of caution and a need for kind of emotional reassurance. And fortunately, she's got a very good partner, and that was very much part of it. But when you have those kind of things, that's what diminishes people to have the confidence to do the thing that to make themselves feel fulfilled, do the thing that's true to them. And so they will go for safe options rather than courageous options. They'll go for the regular job rather than something that's fulfilling sort of morally or spiritually. And so that's one example. Another example, a few days before that, a guy I think he's in Spain, you know, he was in Dubai when he did the handwriting, a businessman. And, you know, obviously you're a businessman, obviously. Right. You know, it's like it sounds completely obviously like and he was a financier for 30 years. I said, but that's not really your thing. Your thing is like, you're really good at looking after people and making people happy, like you do hospitality or something like that. And he runs this amazing luxury hotel in the south of France. So he made all his money in finance, bought a dilapidated manor, renovated this entire manor.
That's what he enjoys.
That's what he's doing now. Yeah. Now, so what he's doing now is he's gone from the career that he should have, he wanted to do from a money point of view, which was actually killing him, to finding the thing that he really liked doing, and he's now doing that which he loves because but he had a very particularly weird fingerprint pattern on his ring finger on his right hand. He was like, okay, the statistical chances of that fingerprint pattern is so rare. That's such a rare and unusual fingerprint pattern. That shows you have a rare and unusual gift, and that gift is to do with entertainment, making people feel happy, socializing, providing a nice environment that's aesthetically pleasing, where you're taking care of people. I said, because you're just the kind of person that doesn't feel happy unless everyone else feels happy too. And he said, that is exactly the ethos I have around this restored manner that I've got. And he's just created this ambiance for it. So he's working out in his life a thing that expresses something as a really fundamental need from him psychologically, which is articulated by a really rare fingerprint pattern, which is kind of like, you know, that's like the Joker in the pack, you know, like it's a really rare card, and you got the trump card, man, you know, like that's, and if you can make your life accord with the kind of the uniqueness and the specialness of the gift that you have, then your life is going to be fulfilling and meaningful to you. I mean, he made all the money before. He needs the money to do what he's doing now.
Yeah,
to buy
the path. Obviously, he had to do the path that he took, you know, to get where he wanted, you know. But
yeah, exactly.
You know,
so there's sometimes the route's a bit more deviant than we maybe like, but at least he's doing something that's fulfilling for him now, you know. And I think that's a kind of, you know, that's a kind of really important thing. There's a guy I know called Andreas Washington who's based in New York. And he's in my book as well, The Palmistry of Fingerprints. I spoke to him a lot because I wanted to include some analyses of the fingerprints of some famous people in my book. So the last chapter of The Palmistry of Fingerprints has got an analysis of the fingerprints of John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, and Malcolm X. So
I'd like to talk about John Lennon, I'll tell you that.
Well, we can do that. I've got his handprints. He had his handprints taken in 1973. When he was doing his lost weekend from Yoko Ono, and he went off to LA with Harry Nilsson and took a lot of drugs. Anyway, he took his handprints at that time as well. But this guy Andreas, he's nothing. He and I have only just met each other 2 years ago, and he's been looking at fingerprints for 45 years. He's a former corrections officer, and he's got access to the FBI database of fingerprint patterns. Wow. He's got an access to 18 million male fingerprint patterns and 4 million female fingerprint patterns, he does a statistical analysis on the significance of fingerprint patterns. What he does is he takes really interestingly unusual people, like people we know are exceptional and talented, and John Lennon Malcolm X, and Jimi Hendrix were some of the examples. He's got a lot of these on his website, and he's basically got their he's written to the FBI and said, "Can I have their fingerprints?" And they go, "Oh yeah, sure." And they've given his fingerprints, and he's done a statistical analysis on their fingerprint patterns. And lo and behold, they have statistically extraordinarily weirdly unusual fingerprint patterns.
Yeah.
You know, Billie Halliday's another one. Richard Nixon's another one. Eisenhower's another one. Martin Luther King is another one. He's got this amazing collection of very well-known, exceptional people, and they all have exceptional fingerprint patterns that are extraordinarily rare. And so it's really interesting. So I've been doing my work on my line, and he's been doing his work on his line, and basically both of you saying, if you have weird and interesting, unusual fingerprint patterns, that means you're a weird and interesting and unusual person, you know. And like we kind of, so I got in touch with them, and so we collabed a bit on this chapter in my book, The Palmistry of Fingerprints, about John Lennon and Jimi Hendrix, because I said, "Can you give me the fingerprints?" You went, "Sure." So he
that
gave
is so
me the
cool,
fingerprints.
though.
So I kind of included them in my book, you know.
I love
so
Jimi Hendrix too.
Yeah, well, of course, Hendrix was exceptional, you know, and so why was he exceptional? Well, it's funny, he has an exceptional fingerprint pattern on the index finger of his left hand, and of course, he was left-handed. So, you know, it's the fact that it's on his left hand is, of course, incredibly significant, because the different fingers mean different things. So where the fingerprint patterns are is important to consider as well. But the index finger, the single most important fingerprint pattern is the one on the index.
On your index? That makes sense to me. We're going to talk more about that. We're going to go to a commercial break and come back, and I'd love to talk about John Lennon's fingerprints. But he also, I mean, he doesn't have my fingerprints, but I did give him pictures of my hands. We'll see what little he might be able to tell from that. I don't know how brutal you might be on me.
I'll be gentle. You're a sensitive soul, that's for sure.
All right, guys, we're going to commercial break. When we come back, too, we'll also open up the phone lines for you guys to call in, ask questions of our guest tonight, Christopher Jones. We're talking about the palmistry of fingerprints, the secret patterns hidden in your fingers and palms, when we come back from the short commercial break.
Conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is $42. Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Christopher Jones. We're talking about his book, The Palmistry of Fingerprints, the secret patterns hidden in your fingers and palms. And you know, as we're learning tonight, you know, it's not about fortune telling or telling, you know, like, oh, you're going to be married and have like 2 kids and 1 dog. You know, it's not that. It's about the pattern of what built and brought you here, especially like the fingerprints he's getting into tonight, because your fingerprints don't change, unlike the lines in your hand. I find that amazing. And like I said, I shared my picture selfishly tonight of my. He can't really tell. He can't see my fingerprints that well, but we'll see what he can read from that. But you should check him out. Jamie's sharing links in there. Make sure you get any of the links later tonight. We'll talk about it, you know, what his website is, so you guys can reach out to him. You know, this is so fascinating to me. I honestly think, you know, I believe in God and the force, whatever you want to call it. It gives us signs and signals in such subtle little ways sometimes, and you know, it has to be that there's things within the prints of our hands, if they're all unique to us, right? I love this. The phone lines are now going to be open. Call in, join the conversation tonight with our guest, Christopher Jones. But let's go ahead and get right back into it. All right, we were talking about celebrity hands there too, like John Lennon's. I've been a huge John Lennon fan. I mean, he's my favorite Beatle. You know, my favorite song to play on acoustic guitar is "Working Class Hero." You know.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to Liverpool?
I've never been out of the country. Sadly, I'd love to go. But
okay. I'd never been to Liverpool until earlier this year, and I thought I was in the UK, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go. I've never been. And I thought, I know what, I'm going to go on the Beatles tour. And I did. And it was absolutely
awesome.
amazing. So you can go to the house that John Lennon grew up with Aunt Mimi in Mendips, and you can go to Paul McCartney's house as well. And I tell you, Liverpool, if you love the Beatles, you'll have, if you go for a weekend, you'll just have Beatles the whole weekend. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah, I would
experience.
totally do it. I would totally do it.
I would definitely give you a heads up that that's a great idea to do, you know. So if you go to the UK ever, make sure you go to Liverpool at least for a weekend to go and check it out. It's absolutely fantastic.
But yeah, so I mean, there's this unique thing you see in different people's hands, like somebody like as as talented as somebody like John Lennon or Jimi Hendrix. You know, what some of the things you saw when you finally got that print? I mean, that had to be pretty cool, like getting a print of John Lennon's hands.
Yeah, Yoko Ono has kept it in all the stuff obviously from Lennon, and she produced a book about a year ago called Mind Games, and she reproduces the handprint in that book.
Great song too.
It's a big sort of coffee table book, lots of photographs of stuff, you know, the kind of things that they were doing in the 1970s, and it just includes his handprints. And I don't know anything about how he had his handprints taken or when that was or who took them or anything like that, but it was amazing to me to see his handprints, because I had actually seen them in the 1980s, and I was at a palmistry at like a mind body spirit fair, and someone was a palmist there, and he had a picture. They had a picture of John Lennon's hands on the wall, and I went, "Oh, I bet they're not John Lennon's hands." And I looked at the lines, and I said, "Oh, he was a bit of an emotional fuck up, wasn't he?" And you know,
I got to ask you to try to watch the F-bombs on here. I try to keep it PG-13.
Sorry. You're right. You're in the United States. It's a bit more okay. But anyway, he's a bit emotionally mucked up, shall we say? So
yeah,
he was. You know, he had a turbulent childhood, and I had no idea. But you can see that in the lines of his hands. But what you can also see, of course, is his enormous creative talent. Would you like me to show you that handprint? I can bring it up.
Yeah. If you can do the share screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
See what we're talking about.
I think I've got it. See what we're talking about here. Let's see if I've got it here. Window. It's in here somewhere. So I share that one.
Problem.
So that's you, but I've got it in here somewhere. There we go. All right. So this was taken in 1973. You know, and I mean, look, it's quite interesting when you're looking at a hand retrospectively, because of course you're going to look at things and you go, well, I already know that about him. But like there are various things that are significant. For example, you can see that the ring finger is longer than the index finger. And if you zoom in, you can see the fingerprint patterns on the fingers. So he's got what are called whirl fingerprint patterns, like these spiral shapes here on these two fingerprint patterns. And a long ring finger with a spiral shape on it is very commonly seen in the hands of artists and musicians. But what's interesting also, can you see the fingerprint on here is like a little wave pattern? It's called a loop. Yeah. And it's a loop that goes from the left side to the right side as we're looking at it, from the thumb side of the hand. That's the thumb side of the hand inwardly. And so what's interesting about that is it's an indication of how sensitive he was as a human being. He was quite prickly. He was quite brittle. He was known for his sarcasm and his sarcastic sense of humor. And he was there was a kind of defensive brittleness about him. And that's often you get that with that kind of pattern. Like he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder in some kind of way. And it's an interesting dynamic he had with Paul McCartney, because when he met Paul McCartney, the first thing Paul McCartney did was tune his guitar, because he didn't know how to tune a guitar. So McCartney's clearly more musical than him, although you can argue that Lennon was more kind of talented as a writer. And what he got in his hand, you can see how strong the airline is going across the hand here with this big fork on it like that. So when you get a long airline like that with a fork, it's often the indication of someone who has that kind of ability in writing and communication, particularly when there's this other line that goes diagonally across it there. You know, when you think of the surrealism of songs like I Am the Walrus or even Strawberry Fields, you know, you've got someone who's got a really good command of playing with words and innovating different kinds of ways of seeing things, and that's the lyrical creativity that he has is shown by the formation of these lines. But the emotional distress he experienced, if you look at, I mean, can you see how clear that line is? Can you see it's quite a clear line? It's quite well formed.
Yeah.
When you compare it to that one, which is all kind of choppy and broken up, and
that's his airline.
This one is the airline, which is to do with his thinking.
Yeah. And
that one's his waterline, which is to do with his feeling. So you can say he's got clear thinking, but mucked up emotions. Can you see that? So the line is kind of really disrupted, and that shows someone who has a very turbulent emotional life. The line curls down at the end here, which is the kind of thing you get in someone who's really possessive. So, you know, he's just a jealous guy, you know.
He was.
And you know, you better run for your life if you can, little girl. Hide your head in the sand, little girl. Catch you with another man, little girl. And that's the end, you know, those kind of songs, you know. But the fact that, you know, he's a dreamer is shown by this line up here. Can you see this line curving around underneath the fingers there? That's a really unusual line to see. And again, it's a line you find in people who've got good imagination. You see it in actors. You see it in people who've got good visual imagination. But they also they're also incredibly idealistic. That's the kind of quality that's shown by this line. Like, I wish for a better world. And I think this line in particular is an exemplification of the notion of the song of Imagine. You know, imagining a better world where people are, you know, there's no war and no religion either, you know. So it's kind of like, that's what you get with a line like that. And what's interesting, Jason, I'm going to flick to your hand now, because you've got very much the same line in your hand. So look at that. Can you see that secondary line going up here?
I was looking at it as you're talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, you've got the same line. It's an unusual line to have. Most people don't have that line. So I've on your. This is your.
I'm a musician. I was a musician. I'm getting back into it, you know.
Well, man, you should do. Look, let me just show you a couple of things that you've got in common with Lennon. Can you see that your ring finger is longer than your index finger? If you
I was going to say, when you said that too, I looked, I go, oh yeah.
Yeah, your ring finger is longer than your index finger. So the ring finger is to do with presentation. It's to do with expression. It's to do with artistry. It's to do with, you find a lot of actors. If you look at Will Smith or Jamie Foxx and those kind of actors, they've got really long ring fingers. If you look at people like David Bowie or David Byrne, they've got really long ring fingers. So really long ring fingers are really common in presenters, in musicians, in performers, people who are good at projecting out an image of some kind and have a strong interest in art and artistic stuff. So that's the long ring finger. That's what that's kind of about. But behind that, you've got the same line formations here. You've got the major. I've drawn on this handprint to make it a bit easier for. That's the other hand. I've drawn it on the hand so you can actually see it a bit more clearly. So you can see you've got the main water line going up here, and then you've got all these upper minor water lines going up here. So these these are all the imagination, visualization, creativity, the lines that show that kind of like idealism. So you're quite a romantic idealist in that kind of way. You know, you want to see it. You've got hope for the future, and you want to see a better world. And I will also say you're also prone to a bit of illusion and delusion as well, because this is the trouble with these kind of lines is the capacity to see things clearly. So one of the things I think is really important for you in your life is probably double fact checking yourself. You know, you're one of these people that kind of like, I could be making shit up here. I could be hallucinating.
Well, yeah, I admit it. I admit it on my show all the time. I don't know. I question everything. You know,
which is it. And I was going to go on to say, what I want to point out is look at your airline. Can you see the green line on the hand?
Yeah, I see the green.
Can you see how far down it goes into the hand? If you remember, John Lennon's one came to about here. And yours goes down about another 2 inches right down into the base, and you can probably see that more clearly in your actual hand. So if I look at the hand without the drawings on it, you can actually see it there. You can see
it goes down
how
to my
far
wrist.
down that line goes. Can you see it? Going all the way down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's a really, really unusually long airline, and it's true on your other hand too. So you've got the same formation in both your hands. The length of the airline is to do with how deeply we think about things and how deeply we investigate things. So the longer the airline, the more deep we go into things. It's like you're not content with the superficial explanation of things. You're not content to just take the face value of things. You know, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on underneath the surface here. I want to find out. I want to get to the bottom of this. And that's where the airline's going. It's going right down to the bottom of the hand. And this area of the hand is the area of the hand to do with occult mysteries, esoteric knowledge, the deep subconscious, things that are beyond the veil, karmic forces, deep, dark recesses of consciousness. And when you've got an airline that goes down into that area of the hand, that tells me that your mind is somebody who wants to go down to the deep, dark recesses of humanity, into the beyond the veil, beyond the obvious, to find out what's really going on underneath the surface. And that's exactly the kind of effect you get when you have an airline that goes that long. Whereas someone whose airline ends sort of more about here is more superficial, they're more surface, they kind of don't really do a deep dive. You're just somebody who's always wanted to do a deep dive. You've always wanted to get down to the bottom of things and sort of work out what the mystery is, what's going on underneath the presentation.
I want to know how it works. You know,
you want to know how
that
it
kind of
works.
person.
I'll tell you who's got an airline like that. There's two people who've got an airline like that you will have heard of them. One of them is Einstein. So, I mean, obviously his discipline was in the sphere of physics, and so that's what he was interested in that kind of way. So that was kind of his concern. But he's got that same quest to get to the bottom of things, to find out what's really going on underneath. And the other person who's got an airline like that is the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama, I mean, in his role, he's got a very deeply metaphysical but occult understanding of the world. Tibetan Buddhism is kind of really weirdly esoteric, and
I've always been very interested in it. Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, and they're interested in reincarnation. The Dalai Lama is himself a reincarnation, like all the Bodhisattva of compassion, Chenrezig. So there's kind of all this kind of notion that there are deep, dark mysteries in the universe. And people with an airline that goes down there want to get to the bottom of it and want to understand what those are. And so that's kind of, this is the line formations that have occurred on your hand. This is kind of the development. But if we just go up the hand to your fingerprints, because I think this is even more interesting. So you've got
I'm totally fascinated right now.
Yeah.
You got me.
You've got a couple of fingerprints on your fingers, and I want to show. I think I'll show you again the fingerprint patterns without the lines on them, without my drawing on them, because maybe you can see them. Can you see? I'm zooming right in on the fingerprints. Can you see those?
Yeah, you really are. It's hard to tell because it washes out. It's hard for me to see.
Okay, it's harder for you to see. All right, but
maybe the audience can see better. I have a little screen, so hopefully the audience can see. I have a little screen I have to look at, so hopefully the audience.
Well, let me go back to the draw. Let me go back to the ones I've drawn on, because you might be able to see those a bit more easily.
Bottom ridges of it.
Yeah, you might be able to see better than me, Jamie, because I have to look at a little screen the way my setup is.
Yeah. Can you see the red that I've drawn on the fingers there?
I could see them. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So you've got a number of you've got different fingerprint patterns on the different fingers. Okay. So the fingerprint pattern you have on your little fingers is called an ulnar loop. The ulnar loop is the most common fingerprint pattern, and the little finger, 85% of the little finger has got an ulnar loop on it. And the little finger's to do with our relationships and our values around that. So that's fairly normal for you in that area of life. You've also got an ulnar loop on your ring finger. So again, that's a very normal fingerprint pattern to find on that finger. Something like 58% of fingerprint patterns on that finger are ulnar loops. So it's really common to find an ulnar loop on that. That just tells us how you're easygoing in your social life and the way you interact with other people. But the fingerprint patterns on the other two fingers are not like that, and particularly the fingerprint pattern on the index finger. And this is a pattern we call a tented arch. So if you look at it carefully, you've got a really little triangle in the full middle of the print, and then the ridges go up and over like that. And then you've got the one on the ring finger is sort of like that. It's almost like a hybrid one, but you can see again, can you see it's like pushing up in that kind of way, that little thrust it's got up there? And you can see that those prints are really different from those fingerprints over there. Yeah. They look like waves. That's how I think about those two. They're like waves crashing on a beach. Whereas these look like thrusting, they look like a tack that's upside down, and the ridges then going to go up and over. And tented arches are the rarest fingerprint pattern of all the 7 main types of fingerprints. In my book, The Palmistry of Fingerprints, I explain the different types of fingerprint patterns, and I explain that there are 7 main types. And they all occur in different distributions. So the loop, the whirl, and the arch together make up about 85% of all fingerprint patterns. So there's about 15% of fingerprint patterns that are not loops, arches, and whirls. And the tented arch, of those 4 other minor patterns, the tented arch is the rarest of all. It only occurs on 1% of fingerprint patterns. And not only that, when it's found, it's usually only ever found on the index finger. And the index finger gives us our sense of identity. I mentioned before the importance of the index finger in terms of, because in terms of the fingerprint patterns. And that's the reason for that, is because there's more variation in the fingerprint pattern on the index finger. And so this is kind of like the keystone of your personality. So let me tell you what Attended Arch is about, and you tell me if that kind of resonates with you in any kind of way.
I'm listening tentatively here.
Because the Tented Arch is about being a pioneer. The Tented Arch is somebody who basically is on a mission. The Tented Arch is somebody who has an inspiration that they want to do something to change the world or to blow things open. They're going to lead the way. They are the prow of the ship. They are the person bursting forth. They're dragging people behind them. They're the first one across the line. They're an inspiration to other people. So they end up in these kind of leadership roles. Not because you want leadership, but just because I'm just going to go and do this because it's really important and really interesting to me. And then sort of people follow in your wake. And that's what it's like with people with Tented Arches. It's like this thrusting energy that's kind of, I'm going that way. And people with Tented Arches are often incredibly idealistic. Like you've got a vision. I mean, we've seen that with the waterline, the upper minor waterline too, that you're a dreamer, you're an idealist, you love John Lennon, you can imagine a world with no pollution and no war and no religion, and that whole thing, that can we have a better world? Well, that is what the Tented Arch is kind of aspiration towards. It's like I want to make that happen in some kind of way. So this impulse is kind of really important in you as a kind of a part of your identity. I am somebody who wants to initiate new things. I am somebody that needs to pioneer something. I need to be on a mission. I am on a mission. Your mission, Jim, should you choose to accept it. And there you go. You're off on it.
I don't know what the mission is. I don't know. But I mean, it makes sense. Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like with my personality, yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of really big. It's a big driver when you've got that's your unusual fingerprint pattern. So that becomes a marker of kind of what's important to you in your life. But this is on your left hand, right? So remember, we've got the left hand, we've got the right hand. We need to look at both hands. So if we go to the right hand, on the right hand, we've got a slightly different story. The lines are pretty much the same, funnily enough, and often the lines are a little bit different. You can see that the airline still goes very deeply down here. Deeply investigative thinking, questioning everything, want to get to the bottom of things, want to find out about life's deep, dark mysteries, find out what's going on beneath the surface, what is really happening here, who's hiding what from whom, where's the power, who's manipulating what, all that kind of deep, all that airline stuff. Like, we need to get to the bottom of this. And then we got the sort of, the romantic and the idealist and, all that sort of stuff with the waterlines there. And, maybe I should be a musician. I got to sing songs about this stuff. But what you have on the active hand, you've got different fingerprints. So all your fingerprint patterns are this loop pattern, right? So you can see, can you see that? I've drawn them where they are. They're all the same on those three. Right. And then on the index finger, you've got a loop that goes the other way. I see it now. Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah, I see.
So you got on these two fingers, you've got the loops going in different directions. And this is called, the one on your middle finger is called an ulnar loop. And the one on your index finger is called a radial loop. Now, the loop is ruled by the element water. And when we see the loop patterns in the hand, we know we've got an emotional person, a sociable person, someone who's responsive to people and situations, circumstances. You're an easygoing kind of guy. You fit in well. You're a bit driven on the inside. You're on a mission. But, socially, you're easygoing. You fit in well. You're adaptable. And that's particularly true of the radial loop when it's found on the index finger. Because what this is for the ulnar loop is like there's your emotionality coming out from inside, but when it's a radial loop, it's the outside coming in. And you're somebody who's incredibly easily affected by the environment you're in. You can easily get overwhelmed by people. You kind of can lose yourself in the people around you. And my advice to people with radial loops is choose your friends really carefully. Choose who you hang out with really carefully, because you're kind of so good at blending with other people. You kind of mirror, basically you mirror back to them what's going on with them. And so you blend in with them. You say, I'm an adaptable kind of guy, I'm good at fitting in. And then we'll go, yeah, he's so easygoing. It's like, whoa. But what happens when you do that is you lose sense of yourself. And I call this.
I said that earlier to you.
You did say that.
Yeah, you did. Exactly what happened.
Yeah, but remember, I wrote about this 30 years ago. I got it in my book, and I wrote about your personality 30 years before I even met you. So this pattern this is the nature of this pattern. I call this the chameleon pattern. So you're somebody who's really good at chameleonizing. You know, you put yourself against the blue background, you become blue. Put yourself against an orange background, you become orange. You kind of blend in with the people around. I mean, you see, it's like, well, I want to be of service. I want to help. I want to feel where this person's at. I want to kind of identify with them. You're kind of really empathic. That's a kind of modern word for describing it. You have a sensitivity and a responsiveness to other people, which can be a really good thing. You get a lot of counselors and therapists with this. I mean, you're a really good listener. You're completely the opposite of Piers Morgan, who never listens to any of his guests. He obviously doesn't have a radio loop on his index finger, but you're really good. That's radio loops. You find out a lot on therapists and counselors and people in those kind of caring professions. Because
I do have a lot of people that come to me that I work with, people that open up to me a lot of times. I'm like, oh wow, okay,
and that's because of this pattern, because they see you being receptive. They see you as a good listener. Because you can identify with them. And this process, you have this chameleon ability to identify with, is a skill, and it's also a problem because you can get overwhelmed. I don't know how sensitive you are, but some women who've got this pattern, women are generally more sensitive than guys. Guys tend to fend things off a bit better, but women will take on board other people's emotions and go, why am I feeling so angry? And then they go, oh, it's not even my anger, it's someone else's anger. They're kind of taking it on board.
Years. Jamie knows.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
By far.
Can I ask, does him being a Gemini...
It has this kind of osmotic quality that picks up whatever's around it, and so what's really important for people with radio loops is to spend time on your own, where you're kind of out of around other people. If you go into nature or just be by yourself somewhere where you kind of get away from it, it's like you're not being kind of bombarded and overwhelmed by this oversensitive input.
You're literally describing everything personality-wise about me to the T, like everything right there. That's like. That's so it. Because I was the kid in the lunchroom. If people stood up because there was a fight and they're like, oh, yeah, these kids are fighting, I get sick. I feel it. Saying? Like, I've always been empathic like that. And I do. I have to, like, my thing is, like, I used to want to, when I was young, when I was in my 20s, want to go to these big concerts and go do these things. And then I found I can't be around a lot of people for a long time. Like you said, I have to have my isolation.
It's really, really important. It's the most important advice I can give. I mean, that's great that you recognize that you have that. A lot of guys don't recognize that. What you're saying when you say that, you're saying, I recognize I'm vulnerable. I recognize that I can get overwhelmed. And, most guys don't want to recognize that they're vulnerable.
No, it's, I admitted it. No, I admitted it in a fight. I mean, I've fought. I've gotten in a fist fight and stuff. And the one time I probably did well was when I was maybe demon possessed. And that's a whole other story. Really, seriously. But most of the time, if I'm in a fight or somebody's angry at me, while I'm fighting them, I'm also fighting off this gut-wrenching, horrible feeling inside that I get from them. Yeah, it's almost debilitating.
Completely debilitating. And so this pattern is an incredibly important pattern if you see it in the hand of a child, to talk to the parents about how they handle that child. So, you're somebody who's very, you would have been very sensitive to parental expectation. You would have been very sensitive to criticism. You would have been very sensitive to how people respond to you. When you're a kid and you're looking up to your dad and your mum and you're holding them on that kind of pedestal, how they respond to you affects you very deeply in terms of how you feel about yourself in exactly the same way that you just described. If you're in a hostile domestic situation, I know if there's violence or alcohol or something, someone with that pattern is going to pick up all that vibe and internalize it. And that's where the kind of trauma can happen from that. So one of the most important things with people who have this pattern is that to recognize that they have this vulnerability. I kind of think of it like having no kind of armor, like no chest armor. And if someone says something, it goes, it just goes straight in. It's like you're kind of, oh, it's just banter, mate. We're just having a laugh. No, it's not. It's like you really hurt my feelings. And as a guy, if you just say that, that's profound, because, and she's going to be nodding, but most guys won't do that. Most guys won't admit that they're vulnerable. And so it's a really funny thing is that people with that pattern will often respond very aggressively. So John Lennon had this pattern. So he had that vulnerability. and he was very brittle, and his sarcasm is a function of that kind of defensiveness. We've done a study on the hands of people who do karate. This pattern occurs in about 20% of people normally, and it's about twice as common in the hands of men who do karate than you expect to find, because they feel vulnerable. They want to do defense.
My son Liam, he actually was my wife's. I was doing pictures of my hands. Like, well, take a picture of our hands together. I do have that. I didn't give that one to you, but it was weird. He has like the same patterns as me, like line wise. She's like, your hands are very, very similar. And he did karate when he started at 6. He really wanted to do it, and he did it for a couple of years. I want to get him back into it if he can find a new school. So I wonder now. I want to look at his finger and see if he has that, because he totally is similar.
It's a good thing to do, but it's a better thing for him to understand if he's got the same pattern. It's a better thing to him to understand how to manage his vulnerability rather than paper over it or cover it up by a kind of brittle defensiveness, So like, my hat's off to you, man, because it's a really difficult pattern, this pattern, and people can suffer a lot in their lives for it. Men tend to want to not admit that they're vulnerable. Women get overwhelmed by it because they're generally more sensitive emotionally, more generally more empathic. But for a guy with this pattern to be empathic, it's kind of really important to recognize. I
recognized it years ago. It's just something when I started inwardly reflecting, about my life and how I reacted to things over the years and why I've done things. Why did you do this, or why do you feel this way?
You've got a really long airline that will allow you to do that. You've got a very strongly analytical airline. I mean, most people's airlines end here. When I put the cursor, but can you see where I put the cursor?
Yeah, I see your cursor. Oh, yeah, I see right where it's at.
Yeah. Most people's airlines end. I mean, that's how superficial, short-term thinking most people are. That's how you can't. It doesn't matter how much you talk to people about the things you know and understand and see. They can't see it. And
you know what always drives Jamie knows this. You know what drives me nuts all the time is in this is why don't people asking all these questions that I ask? Like, why aren't people interested or think about these things? Like, how many times Jamie's probably heard me say that? She had to step away for a minute.
Because their airlines are too short. I mean, literally, you have a perceptual range that's about 2 inches longer by virtue of that line than most people. It's really rare. Einstein is not a normal person. The Dalai Lama is not a normal person. You have an airline like those two people. You see to the depths and penetrate through to the veil like they do. That's not normal. People don't see things in that way. They're pragmatic. They want to know what works. They're concerned about next week and maybe Christmas, and they don't think further. If it's a politician,
I'm concerned about all those things and that. Right? That's what I get. It's like I'm concerned. No, but that is the thing, though. When I was like in my 20s, like when I first started getting into this and like trying to learn to see auras and doing meditation, I was getting into a lot of this stuff. I was in my early 20s, living. When I grew up, you really grew up, had kids, and life hit you.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I get it now. I get why people don't think deeply about these things. I get it.
Yeah. Well, again, interesting that you started doing those things from a young age because you've got a questioning mind, and that airline is like that in both of your hands. You've always been like that as part of your kind of.
Oh, that's how I'm wired.
I admit it's part of your makeup. So, it's like you've always had that strongly questioning orientation towards life. So, did you ever do martial arts? Did you ever do martial arts?
I've always wanted to. We couldn't afford it when I was a kid. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I could afford it for my son. We don't have a lot of money, but we did pay the money to have him take martial arts because I was like, it's something. It was just me and my mom. My mom could not afford that back then, so it's not her fault.
Again,
I had to do Cub Scouts, but I did Tai Chi. That's the closest I got to do to martial arts. But I've read a lot of books and gotten into it. I've just never had a teacher. I would love to do it.
Have you ever done anything like any kind of dangerous sports or any kind of scary stuff like that?
Dangerous sports? I mean, I played sports, but nothing dangerous. I used to. Well, okay. Oh no. When I was in my 20s, no. Okay, yeah. I went spelunking. I used to go amateur spelunking. That's a little bit dangerous. A lot dangerous.
All right. That's what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. I mean, I was looking for a Palmer Glyphic in your hand because there's a Palmer Glyphic that you called the Loop of Mystery that you don't have. I mean, that's why I got you to send me a second photograph, because this airline goes right down into the area where we would find the Loop of Mystery. So the airline is enough to give that interest in those the mysteries and the paranormal and all those esoteric things that you love. But then looking at your handprint you sent earlier on, I noticed can you see here, there's a loop just in the crook of your thumb. Can you see that loop
Yeah.
there?
Oh, yeah, I know that loop. Yeah.
Can you see what I mean? It's like a fingerprint, but in your palm. Can you see it?
Yeah, I know it. I'm looking right at it. I know which one you're talking about.
All right, that's called a loop of courage or a loop of fearlessness. And that pattern, you find that in the hands of people who like doing dangerous sports. You find that in the people who are kind of like, I'm just going to jump off the cliff, man. No fear, man. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah. Or go and do skydiving or whatever. Basically, there's a kind of like a fearlessness or a kind of like a desire to embrace challenges. My sister had one of those. She wasn't sporty at all, but she was very interested in exposing corruption in British politics, and
me and her have that in common, right?
She was fearless about it. She's going, well, I'm going to do it. I don't care if they try and sue me. I'm just going to do it. Like there was a kind of a bravado in that space that she would pursue it. So it wasn't a physical thing for her, but it was a fearlessness and a courage to do things that were challenging and difficult.
Well, paranormal investigator back in the day, I mean, I would go into a place alone, that people would have a lot of crazy experiences and put myself there in a lone room. Yeah,
that's great. That's really great. I hadn't ever thought of that one, but it's exactly the same thing. Can you walk into a haunted house and be fearless? Because if you're going to be full of fear, you're not going to walk into a haunted house. Oh my goodness, there's a whole new interpretation of that fingerprint I'd never thought of before.
Yeah, maybe paranormal investigators have this.
People just want to summarize here. Here we have a person who's really strongly interested in understanding the deep, dark forces of life. They want to get to the bottom of things and find out the mysteries. But, to investigate the paranormal requires a certain degree of fearlessness. And look at this, ladies and gentlemen. The guy has a loop of fearlessness in his hand. That is extraordinary. I've never thought of it in that particular combination.
Yeah, I think about it because I'm not doing sports or I'm not bungee jumping and stuff like that. I mean, I try to keep my risk low because I got kids that depend on me, and a family.
Yeah. But you understand the metaphor, the kind of meeting fear and embracing that and doing it anyway. And I always give the example of my sister because she wasn't sporty like you, but she did it in a different way. But there's that kind of, people call it courage, or you're brave, or you're courageous, or I think it's fearlessness. It's kind of like, nah, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter. It's important, it's like it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. But in your case, to do with the investigation of the occult, the esoteric, the paranormal, the deep, the dark, the mysterious, the unconscious, the karmic, the genetic, the beyond the veil.
I mean, for me, I always said it's wired to me, but I had experiences since I was a child. I have early memories of crazy, weird stuff that most people didn't experience. So part of me is like I'm wired that way to question everything, but my experiences made me wired that way too.
Well, you're open to it because of the radial loop, so you're open to that kind of influence. That's the first thing, and that gives that kind of sensitivity. But you're also the upper minor water lines, the ones I said to visualization and imagination. You see those a lot in people who do things like active dreaming, lucid dreaming, and people who do kind of shamanic journeying, those kind of visualization journeying processes where you can travel through the different realms. So that those upper minor water lines, it's a kind of combination of visualization, hallucination, psychedelic reflexes, and imagination. So it's a kind of combination of those things. And you can argue, did that really happen? And you can argue, well, if I imagined it and it had an effect, yes, it was real. You're not going to dismiss it. In the same way, you can't dismiss dreams as being not real. And that's only a very limited definition of reality that says dreams aren't real. But it's an altered reality. When you've got that secondary line like that, it's like the ability to inhabit that altered reality. And that altered reality could be a VR, like a virtual reality, or it could be a music reality, or it could be an artist's pictorial representation of what they want to paint, or it could be an idealization about a girlfriend and a relationship. All those things are inhabiting a virtual reality, if you like, and they produce different responses. So you've got, in both hands, you've got lines that strongly indicate your ability to inhabit those realms, and therefore that either overwhelms you or you learn how to control it and manipulate and work it. And it's equally present in artists, in mathematicians, in software programmers, in schizophrenics. It's a kind of like, it's a whole, and whether you can manage that or not can depend on other things in your hand. It's like there's
the
daydreamers. Yeah, exactly. It's the daydreamers, and that daydreaming can be very creative, or it can be very stultifying and very
Distracting.
and delusional. Yeah, delusional. So
Yeah.
and so the challenge is always how to how to temper those two things, and that's kind of what I was saying to you before. Your airline is so long that you're not happy with superficial explanations. So if you see something and you go, "Am I imagining that, or am I really? Is that a UFO? Or is that just some guy with a
Right.
torch?" You
Right.
you
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could just be hallucinating. It could be just like some lighthouse flashing, or whatever. It could be light reflect, or is it actually some kind of alien craft? You're going to be the kind of person that says, "I can see all that stuff and I can imagine whatever I like," but let's check it out. And that's your airline that gives you that capacity to analyze the heck out of it, basically, and kind of work out what's really going on there. And that cross-referencing is of course really, really important if you're going to verify it. And again, so what you're talking about there is exactly what you're doing there is exactly what I'm doing in the book, The Palmistry of Fingerprints. It's like I'm fact-checking all this stuff. All the old palmistry stuff, a lot of that old palmistry stuff is literally rubbish. It's literally nonsense.
Right.
It's literally hallucinatory, daydreaming rubbish. And it doesn't work. It doesn't apply. It doesn't work. It's not useful. I mean, really, you want to know that you were born on the 20th of June, on a Monday, or do you want to know you want to know if you're blessed by God, or you want to know when you're going to die? Why would you want to know that? Why wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what. See, but that's like the Hollywood version of palm reading and stuff that people have gotten over the decades and stuff like that. That's what they think of.
Exactly.
Palm reading is that they're going to get like their life plan all put out. I mean, I've had people explain it to me like, "Oh yeah, this is your life. You're going to live this long," or something like that, or whatever. Like, one, I wouldn't want to know that.
Honestly, they're making things up. And I tell you the conclusive proof that shows that, right? The conclusive proof that shows that is that the lines of the hands change over time.
Right.
All right. So what you've got when you're looking at a hand is you're looking at what's happening now. It doesn't tell you what the hand's going to be like in 10 years time or 20 years time.
Right.
So you can't.
Well, the future's always in motion.
Absolutely, and the future's always being created in the present moment, and so the hand is a reflection of that present reality that you're creating or co-creating right at this minute. Hand reading is phenomenological in that sense. It's not a fixed thing. It's a multiple creative thing, and the hands will change according to what you create, how the changes you create in your life. And if you say to somebody, "You're going to be like this, and this is going to happen to you in 20 years' time," you're saying, "Well, you can't change. It's all fate and it's all fixed." And it's like you just took away someone's free will. You took away their agency.
Right, and I don't believe in that. I've had a psychic on here that believed in predestination, like all of his visions that there's nothing you could do to change it. There's only one guy I've had on here that believed that. And I loved him, but I disagreed with him. I'm like, I believe the future's always in motion. I don't think anything's predestined.
Well, I look at it this way. I can say I'm agnostic and I don't know, but I tell you what, I think it's more useful to think that you have some agency and you can make a choice. I think that's more useful from a kind of personal point of view, and it's certainly more useful from a creative point of view, and it's certainly more something that's going to bring you more joy and meaning. But if you're somebody who's in a bad situation, you get told that kind of stuff, that's not going to do you, and that's not going to encourage you, help you, or support you in any kind of way at all.
Hey, buddy, you're stuck. No matter what you do, you're screwed, or you're not. Maybe you'll be rich and successful, but either way, you have no choice in the matter.
And that was true in the 15th century. If you were born a serf, you died a serf.
Right.
If you were a slave, you died a slave. That was it. You didn't have any choices. And so the whole hand reading notion of that comes out of that 15th century view of economics and social realities of 15th century life. It's like we don't live in that world. We have a little bit more agency, a little bit more choice.
What I love about what you're doing with it, what you're going with, is you're trying to look at the blueprints of the soul.
Yeah.
What makes you? What is you? Because that's the thing. I try to, when I got into meditation, when I got all this stuff, I started realizing so many things are masked or superficial. Like,
yes,
you don't really realize who you really are. That there's the biggest thing that opened my eyes to it were 2 past life dreams I've had.
Okay.
That I woke up from like just one I was a Buddhist monk, and another one I was a little black girl that was beaten to death. Both of them I died. I was shot as the Buddhist monk. But I woke up from both of those feeling it. Felt I was those people, totally different, but me, still me. So that means whatever this facade, Jason, this ego, there's something, a kernel of me that's beyond that. That this is just something, you know, there's, if I could be that little girl or that Buddhist monk, then what am I?
The way I think about these things is, if you have a current recollection of a past life experience, that past life experience isn't past, it's current. Because if you can remember it, it's like if I can remember my childhood when I'm 6 and something happened to me when I'm 6, that memory is still living with me. That's still vibrant in my consciousness, and I don't see there's any difference between that and something from a past life. I mean, It's interesting to me what you just said, because you just said in a past life I was a Buddhist monk. What I said about your airline is you got the airline of a Buddhist monk. You know, so you've got a characteristic in your hand that says there's something in me that thinks like a deeply metaphysical, esoteric, occult Tibetan Buddhist monk. Oh yeah, okay, fine. Well, that's current in your hand right now. So we don't have to debate how that happened. We just know that that's your experience because it's current. It's relevant to you right now.
But that's what I was saying. I told you I had that dream, but you were able to see it in my hand before I told you I had that dream, that I was, my past life, I was a Buddhist monk. You know, that this is programmed, the map of your soul is what I'm saying. That's what's so important about it, I think.
That's a really good way of putting it. You know, and it resonates with you because you've got a patterning in your hand that comes up, and it's the past life experience is actually articulating your nature to yourself. You know, it's a way that I would say your subconscious is talking to your consciousness, so you become more self-aware about the forces that are operating within you. And looking at it from the hand point of view is just another angle that's kind of saying the same thing, you know, like it was that kind of experience. I mean, I'm thinking about the girl issue thing. I mean, there's a vulnerability in that. I mean, that's, you know, there's a horror in that situation, being incredibly vulnerable and powerless. And the radial loop fingerprint pattern has that kind of feeling of being powerless in the situation because you get overwhelmed by situations all the time. So that's a kind of a graphic illustration of a psychological dynamic that you still inhabit by virtue of the fingerprint pattern, and you don't experience it like that.
I was a black girl that was a slave. My father was the white master who beat me to death. That's what I understood in this dream.
Yeah, and no power and no control over that situation whatsoever. And that's an overwhelm. That's a description of overwhelm, you know. And there's a part of you that has that susceptibility to overwhelm by virtue of the fingerprint pattern. So, you know, the psyche is a very vibrant and dynamic thing, and it activates in different kinds of ways. What we know is that somehow it manifests itself in the hand, and we know that by inverse thinking. We're going, well, if it didn't do that, it would be impossible for me to work things out from someone's hand. I looked at a hand on the weekend. Where did it go to? I looked at the hand on the weekend, and he's got an incredibly unusual pattern in his palm. I don't know if you can see that. He's got a spiral pattern in the base of his palm like that. It's an incredibly rare thing to see in a palm.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said to him was, "Only mental health illness in your family," and his mother had schizophrenia and she was institutionalized. You know, so like. That's in his hand, and I could see that from that there was something going on. That mark in his hand shows me he's had a certain kind of experience by virtue of being around somebody who's got that kind of patterning, and it's created an effect within him.
That's what I'm saying. If those patterns are there, though, that means in your DNA, in your soul, all these things are recorded in your flesh. You know what I'm saying? Like these experiences, the emotion, everything's this physical and material world, but emotions have energy. Effects that you do to people, and it's built and it's passed on to your children. We do got a phone call here I want to get to before we go to our last commercial break. Who do we got on the line? I think I know.
It's Azarian, Jason. I think I had a few questions, but I think he answered. I think he answered one of them, or half of one of mine. I was wondering if your fingerprints and your, not so much the palmistry, but your palm, but your fingerprints, if they compare to a laborer, okay, and it's recorded and it's, you know, and it's passed down and it's in your fingerprints. couldn't it be used for, like he had said, like if you're going to be a serf, you're going to be a serf all your life, every generation, or a bookkeeper or something else. Couldn't it be used for that you have these fingerprints and, oh, it's typical for this occupation? That's my first question.
What you're saying, and actually, there's some truth in what you're saying, because you find particular distributions of fingerprint patterns in particular vocations, for example. But let's just take, we just talked about Jason's tendon arch on his index finger. That just shows that an enthusiasm, somebody who wants to be a pioneer and an initiator and a leader in a particular field. It doesn't say what field he's going to be a leader or an initiator in. It just, we got to find that from other things in the hand. So in his case, it's the airline that goes down into the paranormal area of the palm. He wants to be an initiator and leader, an area that questions the very fabric of the reality in which we live. I mean, I know one of the women who designed, created human design and brought it to New Zealand. She has that. I know people who are light language leaders in the field of light language. They've got tended arches on their index fingers. So people who are pioneering stuff that's different and unusual, they will have that particular pattern, but it doesn't tell us what they'll do. So the patterns of the fingerprint patterns aren't specifically related to careers or jobs, although you often find similar patterns within particular jobs. That's true, but it's not, because it's more about what those jobs represent. So an arch fingerprint pattern is very practical, a person who they wanted in serving and helping other people. Then if you see that in the hands of women, they'll become school teachers or social workers or nurses. But a world is interested in being individual and being independent, so they'll want to be the boss or the CEO or run their own company. But it doesn't tell you what kind of business they're in. It doesn't tell you what they're doing. It's just they have an urge for originality. The arch has an urge to provide support. A tended arch has the urge to be inspirational leadership. So they have different provenances, but it doesn't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but it tells you why they're doing what they're doing. And it's almost like they're like motivations for the person. And so the motivations will lead them to do certain things and encourage them or impel them to do certain things. And then they have to find a mechanism or a thing that will actually allow them to translate that into the world. Does that make sense?
Okay. Thank you. My second question is that, say you do damage to your fingerprints. They get burned in some horrific accident. Your fingers, you have accidents with your fingers routinely.
That's my wife.
And they're damaged.
She barely has fingerprints.
Yeah. How does that relate to? Does it change the pattern completely, or is it just covered up because of the damage that you've done?
It just means it's covered up because of the damage you've done. That's what it signifies. If you can't, and I've worked with the fingerprints, I have to be able to see them. And if there's scar tissue, if someone takes, sulfuric acid and burns off their fingerprints, what will grow back will be scar tissue, and fingerprints don't grow through scar tissue. Other things they do, the skin gets really thin as we get older. If people use a lot of hand sanitizer or cleaning agents, it can really, those kind of chemicals can be quite damaging for the skin, and the fingerprints get really faint. But if they stop using those things, they will grow back. But if it's actually damaged, if it's like amputation or being cut open with a knife or been scarred by flame, fire or chemicals, the skin is damaged and it won't be repaired, because it's interesting that the skin on the palm of the hand and on the soles of the feet is completely different from the skin anywhere else. There's nowhere else where we have these little ridges, and it's over the surface of the entire palm. And one of the reasons that has that is because it increases the surface area. So it's a bit like the villi in the intestine, like the skin ridges are like that. So if you've got like that, instead of a flat surface, look how much more skin surface you've got. And so all the nerve endings go into the skin ridges. And so the more ridges there are, the greater the sensitivity of the hands. That's why people do laying on of hands, and they can feel the aura and they can feel energy through their hands, is because the hands are are transmitters and receivers of energy. I mean, if I do that with my hands, if I put my hands in that way, I can feel a ball of energy between my hands. And that's just the energetic field vibrating between my two hands. But the sensitivity is in the palm itself. You don't lose that sensitivity, even though you might not be able to see the fingerprint pattern. So that kind of receptive quality is still present.
Yeah, thank you for answering. My third question is that with reflexology, that deals with the ears, the hands, and your joints. Okay. How does that have any comparison to, the palmistry, the fingerprints, anything? That's the first question that I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question, and lots of people have explored that. Reflexology is mainly concerned with the physical health of the organs of the body, and so there's a correspondences between areas of the palm or areas of the foot and the internal organs like the liver and the kidneys and so forth. As hand readers, we have also mapped the hand to find out which area of the hand shows impact of stress or disease on the intestines, on the kidneys, on the liver, and so on. And we can see those in the hand, but they don't actually align. So the map that the reflexologist uses on the hand and the one that hand readers use on the hand, they don't overlap in that kind of way. You'd kind of hope that they might, but they're different systems. And I think they serve different purposes. What we're looking at in the hand is really the way that the nervous system is reflecting the imbalance within the organs of the body, because we have the hypothesis we work with is that the lines of the hand are more a function of the neurology and the state of the nervous system of what's going on with the person, because there are more nerve endings between the hand and the brain than between the brain and any other part of the body. And so that's why we see the easy way to see changes in the lines is in changes in stress levels. The more stressed somebody is, the more wound up they are, the more worried and anxious they are, the more lines they got on the hand, and less lines if they're less stressed and less worried. So there's an interesting overlay, but they're not quite exactly the same. But that's a good question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, great questions, Ariana. I got to go to commercial break, though. Thank you for calling in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you. I got to get the book now.
Oh, yes. All right.
Yeah, you can get it from Amazon.com. Easy enough to get.
Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good night.
All right, we're going to go to commercial break, guys. We'll be back. We got about a half-hour show left. If you want to call in, ask a question of our guest, Christopher Jones, and I. We're talking about Palmistry of the Fingerprints, the secret patterns hidden in your fingers and palms. Like I said, it's available on Amazon. Already got a few people in here already said they're ordering the book now. So you're going to get some definite buyers tonight on this, because it is so interesting. I've always wanted somebody on to talk about this. Been so fascinated and total noob to it, understanding it, but I love it. This is so fascinating to me. We'll be right back after the short commercial break.
Intercepted transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDev.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now, Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Heat 'em up.
Do, re,
be gone.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Christopher Jones. We're talking about the Palmistry of Fingerprints, the secret pattern hidden in your fingers and palms. I've had a lot of different guests over the 10 years I've done this show. Medium, psychic, stuff that, and other people, other kinds of readers, and, tell me stuff about me and all that. And a lot of them, they've hit stuff. They definitely have had a lot of people, Katrina Cooper, when I first met her, blew me away. I'll tell you what, though, the stuff he's saying here about what he sees in my palm, I mean, all that. If anybody that really, my wife was listening to this show, she will later. it describes me to a T. To a T. Everything. Right there. I mean, couldn't have said more perfectly about how I function, why I am, I guess. I don't know why I am the way I am, but the lines say I'm the way I am. I question everything. I'm a deep thinker. That's everything. Totally everything about me. So, I mean, this is so interesting. I love it. The phone lines are now going to be back open. We only got about less than a half hour left if you guys want to call in, join the conversation with our guest, Christopher Jones. But let's go ahead and get right back into it. Thank you for hanging out with us this late at night. Christopher, like I said, you really, everything you've said tonight about what you were just showing a little bit, I mean, this is just you looking at the pictures. I know it's not as easy as doing it in person, but I mean, you nailed it on me. I mean, completely.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The fingerprints are really important because they're relatively easy to identify and they're not complicated. Like a lot of the lines are really complicated in the hand, but the fingerprints, there's only 7 types of fingerprint patterns. There's a few variations, but majority, despite the fact that everyone's fingerprints are unique and nobody has identical fingerprint patterns, there's only 7 types. So you just sort of work out what the type is, and then you kind of got an indication of the kind of motivations that person has and how that's going to express in their hand. When you're looking at things like the lines, some of the lines are genetic. I mean, you can see, mentioned earlier, you've looked at the hands of your son and there's similarities between the lines of your son and you. That's what you'd expect. But then some of the lines in the hand are purely sort of psychological. And so we've got a differentiation there between the psychological effects and the genetic effects. And we are nature and we are nurture. There's certain things that we can't do anything about. We're just born that way. And there's certain skills and things that we can develop because of what we do in our lives and the skills that we develop in our lives. So the lines will change according to that. And I wondered if you wanted to look at some line changes. Would that be something interesting for you to look at?
Yeah.
Oh, is that you and your son?
Yeah, I forgot that was in there. I had it in mind. I didn't send it to you. That's me and my son, Liam.
Okay. All right. Your airline dips down a little bit more than his does. I did the same study with my own parents quite recently, actually. And yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to look at how patterns repeat. I mean, I think we all know this because when your kid's really young, somebody will say, your mum will say, "Oh, look, you look just like Jason," and your wife's mum will say, "Oh, you're just like your mum." There's that kind of argument about whether the kid looks more like the mum or likes the dad. And there's
this one looks like the mom. He looks like the mom.
Well, then in that case, you should look at her hands because if he looks more like the mom, then there may be more similarities between the two. But
my oldest son looks like me.
Okay, start with the fingerprints because they're really easy to see. Okay. So I've got 7 world fingerprint patterns, the spiral ones like John Lennon had.
Oh shit!
Of those patterns, and his mother had 8 world patterns as well. So we you can very simply in a family look at who's got what fingerprint patterns and how they get passed down. The lines vary a lot more, and maybe I can show you.
Go for it.
I got a handprint here of a hand of this change of lines that they've changed over time. Let me just get that for you. Here we go. So I've actually included, can you see that on screen? Is that coming up?
All right, I got it. There.
Cool. All right. So that's this handprint is in my book, The Palmistry of Fingerprint Patterns. This is the opening chapter of the book. And in the opening chapter of the book, I talk about how everybody thinks palmistry is about the lines and the lines are really important and that you can do prediction from the lines. And I just say, well, how could you predict this? So this is a guy called Stan White. He was born in 1929, and the handprint on the left was taken in 1950, and the handprint on the right was taken in 1991. So he's 29 years of age on the left, and he's 70 years of age on the right. And I don't think you need to be well trained in hand reading to look at that and go, crikey, there's a lot of differences in the lines of those hands.
Oh, yeah.
And so what you're noticing is how the lines change over time. And look, and some of these linear changes are in fact to do with the aging process. As we get older, our body degenerates, we're more likely to get diseases, our health deteriorates in some kind of way. And you can see if you look at the thumb, can you see there's the thumb on the left hand is really clear, and then it's got lots of little cracky lines on the thumb on the right. And oops, I've just changed pictures, didn't want to go there. And you can see also that there's more lines on the finger top of the fingers too, and there are no lines up here at all. So all these are the subsidiary lines that change to do with health endocrine states, that sort of thing, and stress levels in the body. They come and go quite quickly. But if we look at the main lines of the hand, so we've got the three main lines. We've got the lifeline, which goes around here. We've got the headline that goes across the middle, and we've got the heart line or the waterline that goes above. If you look at those three lines, you can see they've changed just as much.
Yeah.
So the headline, the lifeline goes all the way down the bottom of the palm here when he's a young man, and when he's older, it stops here. It runs out. So the lifeline got shorter as he got older. Apparently in palmistry, the length of your lifeline is the length of your life, which meant he should have died 20 years ago, but he's still alive. What's going on? It's crazy. You know, so if you're a palmist and you're going, oh, yes, you've got a really long lifetime, you're going to live until you're 80. But if you saw him, you go, oh, you should have died when you were 50, you know, and he's 70 years of age. So this line, you know, but the line's changed, you know. Let's look at the headline. The headline, here it comes across the hand here, and it ends here underneath the ring finger. And here, can you see it's grown about, you know, maybe an inch across the hand there? It's forked, it's got longer. Can you see that this line is really strong on this hand up here, the imagination line like you've got in your hand? And can you see it's got a lot weaker over there?
Yeah.
And then this line here has appeared, and it wasn't there at all. It's completely appeared.
Yeah.
So lines get shorter, lines get longer, lines appear, lines disappear. The lines change all the time. If we look at the detail of the line, this is my favorite example of the detail of the line. So if you look, can you see this line here is split here? It's got this little divide. Can you see over here? It looks completely different. All right. So the detail of the line can change as well. And when you're talking about little crosses and things like that, that's what the palmists are looking for. They're looking for these little marks like this, you know, little crosses here. That's the detail that changes really quickly in the hand. This is an interesting character. This is a guy who was a bricklayer who became a Buddhist monk. And in 1972, he was a karate practitioner as well. And in 1972, he decided he'd become a Zen Buddhist monk. And look at his airline. So look at his airline. Can you see his airline's quite straight going across the hand here?
Yeah.
And then 13 years later, look where it's going.
All the way down.
So it's can you see how he's developed that airline? It's like it's not there when he's in 1972. He's just a businessman working in a business, building houses, being a bricklayer, you know. And then he takes on martial arts, he takes on Buddhism, he does loads of meditation, and he develops an airline which goes right down to the bottom of the hand. He's suddenly interested in esoteric phenomena, the paranormal, the occult, you know, interested in esoteric Buddhism. He's interested in Tibetan Buddhism. You know, he's studying the runes, he's studying magic, he's studying all sorts of occult stuff. And look at that. Can you see his imagination line has completely appeared? It's not there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I see it. Yeah.
It's completely appeared. So you've got that in both your hands. This guy developed that. He went from one lifestyle into another completely different lifestyle. As a result of his efforts and the result of what he did, the lines of his hands changed. You know, he was uneducated. He left school at 16. You know, he left school with a certificate in bricklaying. That's what he got. And then he went on to do university level studies. He translated texts out of Sanskrit into English and Chinese and Japanese, and he was researching all this ancient Buddhist, and he wrote about 30 books. You know, he did all the work of a researcher and an academic with an airline that goes right down there, compared to the more prosaic everyday working line that's shown by that.
So it's like if you look at the lines, it can tell you what the person's going through currently, you know?
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So you looking at this hand, you wouldn't say, I can see that your lines are going to change and you're going to become a Buddhist monk who does lots of visualization, meditation, and write 30 books. You'd go, oh, well, you're probably going to carry on in your father's business and maybe run the business and have a successful building company, you know, because that will be the trajectory that he's on at that time. So, but we can change that trajectory. If we make a decision, we have agency to do that. It's not a fixed fate. It's not a destiny, you know. And this is the opening chapter in the book of Palmistry of Fingerprints, because I want to get across to people that the lines are not the most important thing, because the lines change over time. The fingerprint patterns don't change over time.
And you said you said like one of the things on my index fingers, like 1% rare, but there's only 7 different patterns?
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, that's correct. There's only seven fingerprint pattern types altogether. Yeah, that's right. So, and that's quite complicated, probably too complicated to go into in this kind of environment. But that I spend a lot of time in the book talking about that, because we've got the statistics from Scotland Yard, we've got distributions of 2 million distributions of fingerprint patterns in different populations. Fingerprint patterns are different in different people around the world. And so there's a lot of information about that, the classification. But if people are interested in that, I put a video on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@masterhandreader. And that's basically, there's a video on there which shows you how to classify the 7 types of fingerprint patterns. And
I gotta watch that.
I explain that. It's about 45 minutes long.
Where do I get that? Really. That's through your I don't know if we have that link, because you were putting links in there.
Yeah, I'll put the links in the talk. I'll give you, here's all the links right here. Maybe that's a useful way of doing it. Maybe people can screenshot that. youtube.com/masterhandreader. There's about 100 or so videos on there where I explain a lot of these things. So if people want to go online and read up more about it, then that's an easy way in which they can do that, because I put it online. And obviously people on social media, they can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and so on and so forth. But there's a lot to be covered, and it's quite hard to. What I've tried to do in the book is I've tried to explain it in a really kind of simple, straightforward way. So the Palmistry of Fingerprints is, I wrote it in 1991. I gave it to my students back then, and some of those students have been using it as their kind of Bible of handreading book for 30 years. They've had 30-year careers as professional handreaders. People like Johnny Fincham and Lynn Seal and Felicity Booth. Jenny Hirsch, Tom Brill. There's lots of people all around the world who studied with me back in the 90s. But this is the first time it's become publicly available, this book. And in that book, I cover all the different types of things, the nature of the fingerprint patterns, the genetics of fingerprint patterns, the anthropology of fingerprint patterns. Then I look at the fingers and the meaning of the fingerprint patterns on each of the fingers. And also the meaning of the patterns when you find them in the palm as well, like we saw that one in your palm, the loop of fearlessness. So people can, if you read this book, if you get this book, it'll teach you how to identify the fingerprints, and then it will show you, then you can just look up, what does it mean? You've got a radial loop on your index finger. You just go to the relevant page in chapter 8, and it will say radial loop on the index finger shows someone who's very sensitive, very empathic, and has chameleon-like abilities. And it's like, and you'll better do that. Looking at your fingerprints of your friends, and you better look it up and say, oh, you've got an arch fingerprint on this finger, and that means this, and you can talk about it. So I've kind of explained it in a really easy and accessible way for the interpretation, whilst at the same time giving a lot of the sort of medical and anthropological and genetic and scientific background to it as well. So I've kind of blended the kind of psychological and the genetic, but also the kind of there's a good few examples of famous people I put in there. So I've done an analysis of Hendrix's fingerprint patterns. I've done an analysis of John Lennon's fingerprint patterns, and I've done
two of my favorite musicians. Man, you really nailed there. Actually, so.
Yeah, no such thing as coincidence, and the fingerprints of Malcolm X as well. So I just did go those as examples of what you can do with the information and what you can just say about a person just from
these guys are kind of inspirational people. Have you ever looked at fingerprints of like people that weren't so great, like the real bad ones?
All the time. People come to me for hand readings. They're just
well, that's what I'm saying. Does it show like if you were to let's say John Wayne Gacy, like if you were to seen his hands during that time period, would it be an indicator that this person's doing horrible, evil things?
Well, that's a really good question. Actually, I have been fortunate enough to look at the fingerprint patterns of people who are incarcerated in prisons in the United Kingdom. I did a big study on this. Which I'm part of something called the International Handreading Association, and we run 2 conferences a year. So people who are seriously interested in hand reading, and we get about 50 people coming to every conference from all over the world: Russia, Romania, Brazil, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, and we all get together. It's a Zoom conference. Basically, we get together and have a weekend where we talk about different pieces of hand, and different presenters kind of present their latest research work that they've been doing. And I presented a paper on the hands of criminals. handprints that I again collected a really long time ago, but I'd never really done a proper analysis of them. And I had a student who lived in the Isle of Wight, and the Isle of Wight is a little island on the south of coast of England, and it's got Britain's maximum security prison on it because, of course, it's an island. So if they manage to break out of the prison, they can't go anywhere because it's a small island, you know. So, and she trained one of the prison guards to take handprints. So it was one of her friends, and so he went off to work, and in the wee hours of the night, bored with these prisoners, he took the handprints, and then she gave them to me. So I've got about 25 handprints of serial murderers, arsonists, bank robbers, serial rapists. It's like all of them. And I don't know anything more about the cases than the title that she gave to me, because I wasn't privy to that information. But what we do know is that if they're in Parkhurst prison, they are at the serious end of the offences, not the sort of light end, because that's the maximum security prison. So I've got this handprint collection of like mass murderers and serial rapists. And what's interesting about it, it's not indicated in the fingerprint patterns. So the fingerprint patterns are psychological, motivational forces, karmic forces, genetic
what they
forces.
come into this world with.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I mean, printed.
Exactly. It's like that, and some of them have got great skills. Some of them have great skills and talents, but what you can see is how those have been squashed. So what you see is damage in the lines of the hand. And what the common thing was in the waterline. So the waterline is the upper transverse line, the one up here. And the longer that line is, the more sensitive that line is. If you look at yours goes right across your hand like that. And I said to you, you're a really sensitive guy. When that line is really short, if it's long, it shows sensitivity. The shorter it is, the more insensitive the person is. And what was outstanding was most of these rapists and murderers had waterlines that stop here, like really short. So, so what you've got in them is a characteristic that says they are insensitive. They're insensitive to pain. They're insensitive to the needs of other people. They don't care about other people. They have a lack of reciprocal humanity, or a lack of kind of sensitivity to the feeling states of other people. And that was the common thing. Now, why they're like that, well, I don't know, because I didn't know their backgrounds and stuff. But when you look at it statistically, like they were far more common amongst that population, even if even a small sample of 25, than you would expect to see in a regular Joe combination. I mean, I've got the handprints of Ted Bundy and Charles Manson as well. Those to name some serial killers that you're familiar with. And again, the same thing. It's not indicated in the fingerprint patterns. It's indicated in the lines.
Well, that's the nature versus nurture, question. Like, where do we come in? Is somebody born truly evil? I mean, like I've heard this with Ted Bundy, that that they couldn't really find that he was, he had a very odd situation and all that, but it wasn't signs of total child abuse like others.
And even if it is child abuse, that's not nature, that's nurture, that's unfortunate experience,
Right.
So I mean that's the evidence that I can see is it seems to be a product of conditioning and social events and psychology to do with upbringing and childhood events of adversely affected
evil's
people.
bred.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so.
That's what I think. I generally look at a child and you can see in all these child's faces if they're not harmed or whatever. Innocence, love, God, beauty.
Yeah.
What life is about. I see it, having the best part of me is becoming a father and really realizing that,
Isn't that amazing? I mean, my kids have grown up now, but I totally agree with you. Like becoming a father is kind of the big eye opener in terms of like, what are we dealing with here? What's going on here? What's life all about for people? And when you see that in kids, and you have that responsibility to bring out the best in them.
Yeah.
And that clearly
not raise a monster, right?
Well, a lot of people don't take that responsibility seriously enough,
Right. I say it all the time, sadly.
I worry kids who are being brought up on iPhones and iPads, it's like where's that going to lead us? It's not
or teaching, we teach kids to, hate, that's the worst thing. Teach your kid to hate somebody else because they're different or whatever. As my role as a father is to try to teach my kids how to be, put themselves in other people's shoes, be kind,
let me throw something else at you as well. I think, my role as a father was to bring the best out in my kids.
Right.
Right. But to do that, you have to know your kids. So what advantage are you going to have if you can look at the handprints of your kids or your astrological
Right.
chart of your kid, and you can see the qualities that they have, the skill sets that they have, and you can nurture and encourage and grow those things.
Well,
That's
that's the point I'm getting
power.
at.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
was
Do you-
getting
and-
at. It's like
and
like
if you
I'm
look-
interested, like more of like not me getting a reading, but like paying to have you do a reading for my sons. You know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like what skills has he got? What abilities has? What things do you need to be careful about? What needs to encouragement? What needs development? I totally agree with you. It's absolutely,
Especially my
absolutely
youngest.
paramount. Yeah, I mean, it's really, you have a responsibility to nurture and develop that being as best as you can, and the more tools you have to do that, the more awareness you. Because what I think what a lot of parents do, and quite well-meaningly too, what they try and do, they project onto their child their own unfulfilled wishes, and I want you to
Yeah.
do this, I want to do that. It's like, well, maybe the kid doesn't want to play soccer,
I want them to be happy. Well, I get no. That's a great point because I get crap from everyone. You don't force your kids to do sports. No, I don't. Why? Why am I going to waste my wife's time? She's the one that's going to have to cart them around to do something that if they're not going to put their heart into it and want to do it and succeed at it, then why do it?
Yeah, you got to find what motivates.
Right. I want them to do and explore what they like to do. Like Dean, my oldest son, I'm like, dude, you need to get involved in something more than video games. And he says, well, I like to write. I'm like, well, then that's what you're going to do. And he does. He's been writing a story for months.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
Liam was martial arts, and I want to get him back in it. It's like I want them to do what they want to do.
Yeah, you got to help them find what they want to do too.
Mm-hmm.
You always encourage them to do what they enjoy and follow their heart.
I mean, I want them to learn how to play guitar like their dad, but neither one wants to pick. Well, Liam might. Liam's definitely interested, so he's got to get the fingers.
Well,
there
I tell you what I did with that one, because both my kids are very musical, but I'm not.
I think they both
especially
would be.
musical. But I when my kids started to learn to play the piano, I started to learn to play the piano as well. So we were all playing the piano together. And you normalize
that's kind of what it
learning
is.
to play an
Yeah.
instrument, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's just normal. That's what we want to do." You don't make it a dad thing; you make it a we thing, and then everybody does it. And it was like,
that's awesome.
Well, I just started relearning. My Father's Day gift this last year was a new guitar, acoustic guitar. I lost a bunch of my stuff in a flood, like my guitars, everything. I just stopped playing. I got depressed about it. Used to play in bands. I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that in years.
you got a long
And I
time
hadn't
thing, mate.
played.
You need to present. You need to entertain. You need to express.
I know.
You gotta
Well,
create it
that's the
out there
thing.
without
I
wondering.
I just kind of gotten back into that this last year. It's been
Well, I
therapeutic.
encourage you to do so. So I encourage
It's
you
been
to do
very
so. And
therapeutic,
don't mind the naysayers, and don't mind what other people think about you. Just go and do it. 'Cause
I don't
you
care.
Love it,
I do it because I love it. Yeah, I don't know my best friend. If my best friend was sitting here, he'd be like, "Wow, this is our conversation," because that's what I got people who are like, "Oh, get in bands and do that." I'm like, all I'm doing is wanting to be able to play guitar, sit down, and be able to play songs. If I have anybody to listen, that's great. I'm doing it because it's therapeutic for me, but I'm also doing it to inspire my sons.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons why I want to get back into it. I believe
And-
your
and
dad
what you're-
actually
and what
played in a
you're saying-
band.
And what you're saying here is basically, what I'm trying to do and what my colleagues are trying to do in hand reading, which is to try and draw the best out of people. And
Yeah.
I think the way I think to think about the hand is like a map. It's like a map of your DNA, or it's a map of your consciousness, or it's a map of your soul.
I like it as coding. It's coding.
Or coding, yeah, exactly. However you want to view that, but it's a map, and if you can learn to read the signs and the symbols, you can read the code. It's like Tank in the Matrix, like
Right, that's what I'm picturing.
If you can read you don't see the green code anymore. You see the woman in the red dress. It's like you kind of like and that's exactly what it's like when I'm reading a hand. I've been doing it a long time, so it kind of is put in my mind, and I can.
You recognize the
people find it
patterns.
amazing because it's like all I'm doing is I'm looking at patterns. What I've done is I've articulated what each of those patterns are about. What I have isn't a psychic skill handed down in seven generations of psychic. It's a skill that I've learnt, and it's a skill that I can teach people, and I have taught people. And so that's what we're doing in the IHRA is we're running courses to teach people how to become professional hand readers. And so it's not something that it's something that you can actually study and actually learn. And what I've done is I've worked out what the bits are. Then the skill is how do you knit them together? It's like if you can see the code coming down the screen, how do you make that into the woman in the red dress? Like you got to see that. And I can teach people how to do that. And I do teach people how to do that. And I know that, and this book, The Palmistry of Fingerprints is the key book for that. It absolutely transforms everything about hand reading. It transforms palmistry. It makes palmistry look completely redundant. It's a book that's been a long time coming. One of my students, Johnny Fincham, he's been nagging me for literally 25 years to get this book published. So it's coming out in January the 27th. It's available from Amazon.com or Amazon.co.
I want a physical copy of this book. I got to get one. I had a book.
You can get it on. You can order it now. If you order it now, it'll be delivered to you on the 27th of January. You can get an ebook. Some places in the world can only get an ebook, or people prefer that. There's an ebook version as well. And it's basically the handbook that all these hand readers have been using for the last 30 years. When they've been practicing as a hand reader, they've had it as their sort of go-to book to kind of check things out. What does it all mean? And now everyone can do it. It's going to change the way people see their hands, and it gives people inspiration to become what they naturally are. If you can find those skills and people say all the time, I feel affirmed to become me. It's okay to be me. And if I can do that, then I'm being like you as a father to your son. It's okay to be you, develop the skills that are you, flourish as you, and become the glorious being that you are. And if you have a hand reading, or if you have understanding of what the features of the hand mean, that allows you to do that, because it gives you the insight to what that is.
That's what I think is so awesome about it. I also think it's like you're reading like a language, like something that's being communicated from the essence of us, like whatever the building blocks of us, like it's communicating a message in our skin. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's its own language, patterns in that. That means that's a consciousness inside of us, that makes this. There's something more than it's just randomness. This is all just randomness on your hands. It's not. It's not. It's
absolutely not. And as I say, the scientists have proven that, even if they only did that with the hands of Down syndrome. It's not random. If they can diagnose Down syndrome from the hand, what else is possible?
Right. That's real. I've been being very selective about guests this year. I've been trying to get really good guests on topics. You blew me away tonight. Totally awesome, Christopher. I love it. I definitely want to get a copy of your book, guys. Palmistry of Fingerprints, Secret Patterns Hidden in Your Fingers and Palms. Check it out. You said, what was the release date again in January?
27th of January.
27th of January, guys. Coming out. You can pre-order. Go to Amazon. Like I said, ebook. Christopher, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, Jason. It's been an absolute blast. I've had a fun time. It's been wonderful talking to you. Wonderful rapping about these things and great questions as well. And I hope your audience enjoyed it.
I think I did. I was selfishly getting a reading for myself a little bit there, getting told I have, Einstein's. It was like my wife, listen, I got Einstein. She'd be like, shut up.
It's a fact, man. You can't help the fact. There it is.
All right. Well, thank you, Christopher. That's it for the show, guys.
Nice to meet you. Let's meet
nice
again
to meet you.
Sometime.
Yes,
we'll do it again.
We should definitely do it again. Thank you so much, Christopher. You were awesome. All right, guys. We'll be back next Sunday. No guest. I've been really hard finding guests. I don't have anybody till February 7th, so it'll be open lines, World Wide Web of Weird next Sunday. Call in. You make the show, guys. And, we'll see. It might be 3 hour. It might be only a 2 hour show next week. We'll see how much you guys make the show next week by calling in. We'll talk about whatever. We'll see what weird happens between now and then for the World Wide Web of Weird and what discussions that may bring. But thank you to all the supporters of the show. Thank you to our Patreons and our YouTube channel members. You guys help pay the bills for this show. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who shares out the show. Keep telling people about Paranormal Soup, where the weird happens live every Sunday night. All right, guys. Have a great night. See you next Sunday.